Louis Cooper's fingers fly across the console, desperately searching for a way to prove his worth. The human engineer stands out like a sore thumb aboard the Stellar Horizon, an interstellar freighter crewed almost entirely by Romulans. Their mocking laughter echoes through the bridge as Louis fumbles with unfamiliar alien technology. Having trouble with basic nav systems, monkey? Vega, the ship's navigator, sneers. Her pointed ears twitch with amusement. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable with an abacus and star chart. Louis grits his teeth, forcing himself to focus on the task at hand. The Stellar Horizon is on a routine cargo run to Zeta 9, a distant outpost on the fringes of Romulan space. It's mind-numbing work, but it's all the human has been deemed qualified for by his alien superiors. Captain Krell, a grizzled Romulan veteran, watches the exchange with thinly veiled contempt. Enough, Vega! Let the human play with his buttons. We have real work to do. As if on cue, an alert chirps from Louis's console. His eyes widen as he reads the sensor data. Captain, I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature from a nearby uncharted planet. It's unlike anything I've seen before. Krell dismisses the find with a wave of his hand. Probably some decaying isotopes or a faulty sensor. Ignore it. But Louis can't shake the feeling that this is important. The signature bears an uncanny resemblance to theoretical human weapon systems he studied back on Earth. Sir, with all due respect, I think this warrants investigation. It could be a waste of our time, Krell interrupts. We have a schedule to keep. Louis stands, his resolve hardening. Captain, I formally request permission to lead a brief surface expedition. If I'm wrong, I'll scrub plasma conduits for a month. The bridge falls silent, all eyes on the audacious human. After a tense moment, Krell barks out a laugh. Very well, Cooper. You have 2 hours. Vega, you're in charge of the landing party. Make sure our little explorer doesn't hurt himself. Minutes later, Louis steps onto the barren surface of the uncharted world, his heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. Vega and 2 other Romulans flank him, their disruptor rifles at the ready. Well, human, Vega taunts, where's your great discovery? Louis consults his tricorder, following the energy signature. It leads them to a rocky outcropping that seems unremarkable, until Louis spots a faint seam in the stone. He runs his hand along it, feeling for any give. With a grinding rumble, a section of rock slides away, revealing a yawning entrance to an underground complex. The Romulans stare in disbelief. After you, monkey, Vega says, her voice tinged with newfound wariness. Louis leads the way into the facility, marveling at the advanced technology lining the corridors. It's clearly non-Romulan in origin, yet somehow familiar. They navigate a labyrinth of passageways, each filled with dormant machines of unknown purpose. Finally, they emerge into a vast chamber that takes Louis's breath away. Before them stands a massive warship, sleek and pristine, unlike any vessel he's ever seen. As he approaches, his tricorder confirms the impossible. It's of human origin, predating known human spaceflight by millennia. This can't be, Vega mutters, her earlier mockery forgotten. Louis cautiously approaches the ship's access hatch, drawn by an inexplicable sense of connection. As his hand touches the hull, systems flicker to life. A holographic interface materializes before him, addressing him directly. Welcome, Commander, the ship's AI intones. This vessel awaits your orders. In that moment, as Vega lunges forward to seize control, Louis realizes he stands at a crossroads of human destiny. The ship's defenses activate, incapacitating the Romulans. Louis alone remains conscious, the power of an ancient human empire at his fingertips. With trembling hands, he initiates the launch sequence. As the massive hangar doors above begin to open, Louis knows his decision here will forever alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity, long mocked and underestimated, is about to reclaim its forgotten legacy among the stars. Louis's fingers danced across the unfamiliar controls, his heart pounding as he initiated the launch sequence. The ancient warship hummed to life, systems awakening after eons of slumber. A deep rumble reverberated through the chamber as massive gears ground into motion, the ceiling above splitting apart to reveal a star-studded sky. The vessel rose smoothly, effortlessly breaking free from its underground berth. As they ascended through the planet's atmosphere, Louis watched in awe as the barren landscape fell away beneath them. The ship's sensors flared to life, presenting him with a wealth of information about their surroundings. On the planet's surface, Captain Krell and the remaining Romulan crew members gaped at the enormous ship emerging from the ground. Krell's pointed ears twitched as he barked into his communicator. "All personnel, emergency evac, back to the stellar horizon, now!" Louis observed the frantic scramble below through the ship's advanced imaging systems. He zoomed in on the stellar horizon, noting its outdated weaponry and paltry shielding. A smirk played at the corners of his mouth as he realized the tables had turned. "Welcome aboard the Phoenix, Commander Cooper," a melodious voice echoed through the bridge. Louis started, searching for the source of the sound. A holographic figure materialized beside him, a woman with glowing, translucent features. "I am Arya, the Advanced Reconnaissance and Intelligence Assistant. I've been waiting a long time for someone like you." Louis's mind reeled as Arya began to unfold the truth of humanity's forgotten past. Tales of a vast human empire that once spanned the stars, brought low by a catastrophic war with an alien race long since vanished from the galaxy. The loss of their advanced technology had plunged Earth back into a primitive state, erasing all memory of their former glory. As Arya spoke, Louis's attention was drawn to the tactical display. The stellar horizon was making a run for it, its engines straining at maximum capacity. Without hesitation, Louis plotted an intercept course. "Incoming transmission," Arya announced as they closed in on the fleeing freighter. Captain Krell's face appeared on the interface, his usual sneer replaced by barely concealed fear. "Cooper, whatever you think you're doing, stop this madness at once. Surrender that vessel immediately." Louis leaned forward, a newfound confidence surging through him. "I don't think so, Captain. In fact, I believe you'll be the one surrendering today. Prepare to be boarded." Krell's eyes widened in disbelief. "You insolent—" Louis cut the transmission with a flick of his wrist. Turning to Arya, he asked, "What offensive capabilities does this ship have?" The AI's holographic form smiled. "The Phoenix is equipped with targeted energy weapons, capable of disabling enemy vessels without destroying them. Shall I demonstrate?" At Louis's nod, a brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the Phoenix, striking the stellar horizon's engine nacelles with pinpoint accuracy. The freighter's propulsion systems sputtered and died, leaving it adrift in space. "Well done," Louis murmured, admiring the precision of the attack. He opened a channel to the disabled ship. "Captain Krell, I trust I have your attention now. You and your crew will gather in the cargo bay immediately. Any attempts at resistance will be met with force." Moments later, Louis materialized in the stellar horizon's cargo hold, the Phoenix's advanced transporters depositing him without a sound. He found himself face to face with the assembled Romulan crew, their expressions a mix of anger, fear, and confusion. Vega stood at the front of the group, her earlier mockery replaced by a grudging respect tinged with hatred. Captain Krell stepped forward, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Explain yourself, Cooper. What is the meaning of this? Where did that ship come from?" Louis took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. "That ship, Captain, is a relic of humanity's forgotten past. We were not always the primitive monkeys you believed us to be. Once we ruled the stars." As Louis recounted the tale Arya had shared with him, he watched the Romulans' expressions shift from disbelief to growing unease. The implications of his words sank in. The balance of power in the galaxy was about to change dramatically. "So now," Louis concluded, his voice firm, "you have a choice to make. Join me in exploring the remnants of this ancient human empire, or I'll leave you marooned on the nearest habitable world. The decision is yours." The cargo bay fell silent as the Romulans exchanged uncertain glances. Captain Krell's face was unreadable as he considered their options. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. "It seems we have little choice but to cooperate. For now. But make no mistake, Cooper. This isn't over." Louis nodded, understanding the implicit threat in Krell's words. "Fair enough. We'll set course for the nearest major spaceport to resupply. After that, we have a galaxy of secrets to uncover." As Louis prepared to beam back to the Phoenix, he caught Vega's eye. The Romulan navigator's gaze was calculating, measuring him anew. Louis realized that while he had won this battle, the war for acceptance and survival was not nearly finished. Back on the bridge of the Phoenix, Louis plotted a course for their next destination. As the stars streaked by outside, he couldn't help but marvel at how quickly his life had changed. From a despised outsider to the commander of the most advanced ship in known space, Louis Cooper now held the key to humanity's lost legacy. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but for the first time in years, Louis felt a spark of hope. Whatever challenges awaited them in the vast expanse of space, he was ready to face them head-on. As Louis contemplated the challenges ahead, Arya's voice broke through his thoughts. "Commander, I've detected another anomalous energy signature. It bears striking similarities to the one that led us to the Phoenix." Louis leaned forward, his fatigue forgotten. "Where?" "An asteroid field in a nearby star system," Arya replied, projecting a holographic map. Louis studied the projection, his mind racing. This could be another piece of humanity's lost legacy. He turned to the holographic AI. "Plot a course. We're making a detour." "Cooper, what are you doing?" Captain Krell's voice crackled over the comm. "We agreed to head to the spaceport." "Change of plans, Captain," Louis replied, his voice firm. "We've got another lead to investigate. The stellar horizon can wait at a safe distance while we check it out." Krell's protest fell on deaf ears as Louis guided the Phoenix into the asteroid field. The ancient warship's superior shielding and maneuverability allowed them to navigate the treacherous terrain with ease. As they approached the source of the signal, Louis' eyes widened. Before them loomed a massive hollowed-out asteroid, its interior glowing with faint energy signatures. "Arya, scan for any signs of life or active technology," Louis commanded. The AI's response was immediate. "I'm detecting a faint distress signal emanating from within the asteroid, Commander." Louis' fingers flew over the controls, preparing for a closer approach. The comm system crackled to life once more. "Cooper, this is madness," Krell growled. "You have no idea what's waiting for you in there." "That's precisely why we need to investigate," Louis shot back. He turned to the Romulan crew members on the Phoenix's bridge. "Vega, you're with me. The rest of you, stay alert and monitor our progress." Moments later, Louis and Vega materialized inside the asteroid. The air was stale, heavy with the weight of ages past. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing sleek metal walls and dormant consoles. "It's the same architecture as the Phoenix," Louis breathed, running his hand along a nearby panel. "This is definitely from the ancient human empire." Vega scowled, her disruptor rifle held at the ready. "Let's find the source of that distress signal and get out of here." As they ventured deeper into the facility, a weak groan echoed through the corridors. Louis and Vega exchanged glances before cautiously approaching its source. In a small chamber filled with unfamiliar equipment, they found the source of the distress call. A figure lay slumped against a console, its form clearly non-human. As Louis approached, the alien's eyes fluttered open, revealing iridescent pupils. "Hello," Louis said softly, kneeling beside the injured being. "We're here to help. Can you understand me?" The alien's eyes widened in surprise. It spoke, its voice melodic despite its obvious pain. Louis looked to Vega in confusion, unable to comprehend the strange language. "Arya," Louis called out, tapping his communicator. "We need a translation." The AI's voice filled the chamber. "Accessing the outpost systems now, Commander. Translation matrix online." The alien's words suddenly became clear. "Am Zara, xenoarchaeologist. My ship, damaged by asteroids. Been stranded here, studying this outpost." Louis helped Zara into a more comfortable position. "I'm Louis Cooper, and this is Vega. We're from... Well, it's complicated. What can you tell us about this place?" Zara's eyes lit up with excitement despite her injuries. "This outpost, part of vast network, ancient human empire, key to understanding galaxy's history. My people, the Ardrani, have studied remnants for generations." Louis felt a surge of excitement. "There are more places like this, with data about humanity's past?" Zara nodded weakly. Outpost contains coordinates. Other installations. Artifacts scattered across galaxy. Before Louis could inquire further, Arya's voice cut in urgently. Commander, I'm detecting an incoming fleet of ships. They appear to be of Ardrani origin. Captain Krell's voice followed immediately. Cooper, we need to leave now. We can't risk a confrontation with an unknown alien force. Louis stood, his mind racing. They had stumbled upon a wealth of information about humanity's past, but now faced a potential conflict with an advanced alien species. The next few moments would be crucial. He turned to Vega, who watched him with a mix of wariness and curiosity. What's it going to be, human? She asked, her hand still on her weapon. Louis took a deep breath, weighing his options. The chance to uncover humanity's lost legacy and potentially form an alliance with a species that had been studying their history was too valuable to pass up. We stay, he declared, his voice filled with perseverance. Arya, begin transferring the outpost data to the Phoenix. Vega, help me get Zara to the medbay. As they prepared to transport back to the ship, Louis opened a channel to the approaching Ardrani fleet. Whatever came next, he knew it would reshape the course of his unexpected journey, and perhaps the fate of humanity itself. Louis's voice crackled over the comm system. Ardrani fleet, this is Commander Louis Cooper of the Starship Phoenix. We mean you no harm. We've rescued one of your own and request a peaceful dialogue. There was a tense moment of silence before a response came through. This is Admiral Zen of the Ardrani Exploration Force. We appreciate your assistance. Prepare for our arrival. As the Ardrani ships drew closer, Louis turned to Vega and Zara. Let's move to the docking bay. We need to make a good first impression. The trio made their way through the Phoenix's corridors, Zara leaning on Louis for support. They arrived at the docking bay just as the sleek Ardrani shuttle touched down. The shuttle's doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing Admiral Zen and his delegation. The Admiral was a tall, imposing figure with iridescent scales and 4 arms. His eyes, like Zara's, were filled with an otherworldly intelligence. Louis stepped forward, his hand extended in greeting. Welcome aboard the Phoenix, Admiral Zen. I'm Commander Louis Cooper. Zen's upper right hand grasped Louis's in a firm handshake. Commander Cooper, I must say, I'm amazed to see a functional ancient human warship. This is quite extraordinary. Louis nodded, gesturing to his companions. This is Vega, our navigator, and I believe you know Zara. Zen's eyes softened as he looked at Zara. It's good to see you safe, Zara. Your disappearance caused quite a stir. As they made their way to the command center, Louis couldn't help but notice the Ardrani's fascination with the Phoenix's technology. Their eyes darted from console to console, taking in every detail. In the command center, they found Captain Krell waiting, his face a mask of barely concealed suspicion. Louis made the introductions, watching as Krell and Zen sized each other up. Now, Louis began, taking a seat at the head of the conference table, I believe we have much to discuss. Over the next hour, Louis recounted the events that led to his discovery of the Phoenix and his mission to uncover humanity's forgotten legacy. Admiral Zen listened intently, his expression growing more intrigued with each passing moment. When Louis finished, Zen leaned forward. Commander, what you've stumbled upon is more significant than you realize. The Ardrani have been studying remnants of the ancient human empire for centuries. We believe they hold the key to advanced technologies that could benefit the entire galaxy. Louis's eyes widened. You've been studying our history all this time? Zen nodded. Indeed. And now I'd like to propose an alliance. We'll share our extensive research on human artifacts in exchange for access to the Phoenix's technology and your cooperation in future expeditions. Before Louis could respond, Captain Krell interjected. And what about Romulan interests? We can't simply ignore our own agenda. Louis held up a hand, his mind racing. I think I have a solution that could benefit us all. We form a joint expedition team, myself, selected Romulan crew members, and Ardrani researchers. The Phoenix will serve as our primary vessel. Zen considered the proposal, his lower arms tapping rhythmically on the table. Acceptable, but I have one condition. Our first mission must be to investigate an Ardrani outpost that recently went dark while studying a significant human artifact. Louis nodded. Agreed. It'll be a good opportunity to test our new alliance and potentially uncover more of humanity's past. As they hammered out the details of their agreement, Arya's voice suddenly filled the room. Commander, I'm receiving an incoming transmission from Romulan space. It's directed at Captain Krell. The room fell silent as the message played. A stern Romulan voice demanded an immediate report on the stellar horizon's extended absence and unexpected course deviation. Louis watched as Krell's face paled. The Romulan captain was caught between his duty to the Empire and the potential benefits of their new alliance. Captain, Louis said softly, I have an idea. We can use the Phoenix's advanced communication systems to send a false report to Romulan command. It'll buy us time for our expedition. Krell's eyes narrowed as he weighed the risks. After a long moment, he nodded. Do it. The potential knowledge we could gain is worth the risk. With the immediate crisis averted, Louis began organizing the joint expedition team. He selected a mix of human sympathetic Romulans and those with specialized skills, including the reluctant but highly capable Vega. Zara, now recovered from her injuries, volunteered to join as a liaison. My knowledge of both human artifacts and Ardrani culture could prove invaluable, she offered. Louis spent the next few days using the Phoenix's fabrication systems to create suitable accommodations for the diverse crew. He worked tirelessly, ensuring that all species could coexist comfortably during their long journey ahead. In his spare moments, Louis pored over the Ardrani's shared research on human artifacts. The wealth of information was staggering, providing tantalizing glimpses into humanity's forgotten golden age. As the preparations neared completion, Admiral Zen provided the coordinates for the silent Ardrani outpost. Louis input the destination into the Phoenix's navigation system, charting a course through uncharted space. The stellar horizon, deemed too conspicuous for their covert mission, was left at a nearby Ardrani space station for safekeeping and minor repairs. Standing at the helm of the Phoenix, Louis looked out at the stars. The newly formed alliance was secured, their first destination was set, and they were about to embark on a journey that promised to uncover more secrets of humanity's forgotten past. As he gave the order to depart, Louis couldn't help but reflect on the whirlwind of events that had led him to this moment. From a ridiculed engineer to the leader of an interspecies expedition into the unknown, his life had changed beyond recognition. The Phoenix's engines hummed to life, and the stars outside began to streak as they entered warp speed. Louis turned to his diverse crew, human, Romulan, and Ardrani, all united in their quest for knowledge. Well, he said, a small smile playing on his lips, let's see what secrets the universe has in store for us. Us. With those words, the Phoenix surged forward into the unknown, carrying its diverse crew towards new discoveries and potential dangers. As the ship settled into its journey, Louis wasted no time in acclimating the crew to their new roles. The command center buzzed with activity as he organized training sessions, assisted by Arya's vast knowledge banks. Vega, I want you to familiarize our Ardrani guests with the navigation systems, Louis instructed, watching as the Romulan woman nodded reluctantly. And Zara, if you could work with our Romulan engineers on understanding the propulsion technology. The following days were filled with a flurry of activity. Louis found himself constantly moving between different sections of the ship, answering questions and mediating minor disputes between crew members. The mix of species and cultures aboard the Phoenix created a unique atmosphere, filled with both tension and excitement. On the fifth day of their voyage, Arya's voice cut through the usual hum of the bridge. Commander, I'm detecting an uncharted asteroid field directly in our path. It's not present in any known star charts. Louis leaned forward in his chair, his eyes scanning the view screen. The field stretched out before them, a maze of tumbling rocks and debris. Interesting. Arya, run a full sensor sweep. Let's see what we're dealing with. As the data streamed in, Louis made a decision. We're going through, he announced, earning surprised looks from the bridge crew. It's an opportunity to test the Phoenix's capabilities. Vega, take the helm. The Romulan woman slid into the pilot's seat, her hands hovering over the controls. You sure about this, human? She asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Louis nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Show us what this ship can do. The Phoenix entered the asteroid field with grace, its advanced sensors allowing Vega to navigate the treacherous path with precision. The crew watched in awe as the ancient warship effortlessly dodged and weaved between the massive rocks. Suddenly, Arya's voice filled the bridge once more. "Commander, I'm detecting an unusual energy signature emanating from a large asteroid approximately 500 meters to our starboard side." Louis's eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. "Take us closer, Vega. Nice and easy." As they approached, the true nature of the asteroid became clear. A massive, hollow cavity was visible, with what appeared to be an artificial entrance carved into its side. "Well, that's certainly not natural," Louis mused. He turned to the crew, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Vega, Zara, you're with me. We're going to check this out." Minutes later, the trio materialized inside the asteroid, their environmental suits protecting them from the vacuum of space. Louis's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing worn metal walls and abandoned equipment. "This was a mining operation," Zara observed, her voice filled with fascination. "But the technology, it's unlike anything I've seen before. It appears to be a mix of ancient human design and something else." As they ventured deeper into the asteroid, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of a significant discovery. His suspicions were confirmed when they reached a massive sealed door at the end of a long corridor. "Arya," Louis called out, activating his comlink. "I'm sending you the data from this door's locking mechanism. See if you can crack it." There was a moment of silence before Arya responded. "Decryption complete, Commander. Opening the door now." With a hiss of hydraulics, the ancient portal slid open, revealing a sight that took Louis's breath away. The chamber beyond was filled with rows upon rows of sleek, advanced weaponry. Even to his untrained eye, it was clear that these weapons were far beyond anything currently in use in the galaxy. "These are definitely of human origin," Louis breathed, carefully lifting one of the devices. Its weight and balance felt perfect in his hands, as if it had been designed specifically for human use. Vega eyed the weapons warily. "We should leave these where they are, Cooper. We don't know what they're capable of." Louis shook his head. "We can't leave this here. The potential value of these weapons, both for our defense and as a bargaining chip, is too great to ignore." He tapped his comlink. "Phoenix, prepare for mass transport. We're bringing aboard a weapons cache." As the crew began to move the weapons, a low rumble shook the asteroid, warning klaxons blared to life, and a computerized voice echoed through the chamber. "Security breach detected. Self-destruct sequence initiated." "Everyone out now!" Louis shouted, coordinating the evacuation with the Phoenix. The ground beneath their feet began to shake violently as they raced back towards the entrance. Louis's mind raced as he calculated their options. "Arya, lock onto our signals and the weapons cache. Prepare for emergency transport." The familiar tingle of the transporter beam enveloped them, just as the asteroid's structure began to collapse. They materialized on the Phoenix's transporter pad, the weapons cache appearing alongside them moments later. "Get us out of here," Louis ordered as he sprinted to the bridge. The view screen showed the asteroid imploding, sending a shockwave of debris in all directions. The Phoenix's shields flared as they absorbed the impact, but several nearby Ardrani support vessels weren't so lucky. As the dust settled, Louis found himself facing a crew divided. Some of the Romulans, led by a visibly angry Vega, accused him of recklessly endangering their lives for human relics. Admiral Zen, while impressed by the discovery, expressed concern about the weapon's potential impact on galactic stability. Louis held up his hands, calling for calm. "I understand your concerns, but we couldn't leave those weapons for someone else to find. They're too powerful, too dangerous." He turned to face the entire crew. "For now, we'll secure them in a heavily guarded section of the ship. Only Arya and I will have full access." As the crew dispersed to their stations, Louis received an urgent message from Arya. "Commander, I'm detecting an incoming transmission. It's coded and appears to be of Earth origin." Louis's brow furrowed as he retreated to his private quarters to receive the message. The face that appeared on his screen was unfamiliar, but the words sent a chill down his spine. "Commander Cooper, we are a secret organization on Earth, aware of humanity's true history. We're contacting you to warn you of a growing threat to your expedition. Other factions, both human and alien, are now aware of the Phoenix's existence. They're mobilizing to either seize or destroy it. Be on your guard." The transmission cut out, leaving Lewis in stunned silence. He realized that his quest to uncover humanity's legacy had far greater implications than he'd ever imagined. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders as he made his way back to the bridge. "All hands, battle stations," Lewis ordered, his voice carrying an edge of steel. "Resume course to the Ardrani outpost, but be prepared for anything." As the Phoenix dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the silent Ardrani outpost came into view on the main screen. Louis leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he noticed unusual energy readings surrounding the structure. "Looks like we might have company," he muttered, his hand hovering over the weapons control. "Let's see what secrets this outpost is hiding." Hiding, the unusual energy readings surrounding the structure, set Louis's nerves on edge. "Aria, run a full-spectrum analysis," Louis ordered, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Something's not right here." The AI's response came swiftly. "Commander, I'm detecting advanced shielding technology surrounding the outpost. It far exceeds typical Ardrani capabilities." Louis exchanged a concerned glance with Admiral Zen. "Could it be a recent upgrade?" The Ardrani leader shook her head. "Impossible. We haven't sent any new tech to this outpost in years." "There's more," Aria interjected. "I've detected multiple cloaked ships in close proximity to the outpost." Louis's mind raced through possibilities. "Raise shields and activate all defensive systems," he commanded, his voice steady despite the growing tension. "Let's not take any chances." The Phoenix hummed to life, its ancient systems responding with remarkable efficiency. Louis could almost feel the ship's eagerness for action, as if it had been waiting centuries for this moment. "Deploy the probe drones," Louis instructed. "Let's see what we're dealing with." A series of sleek silver drones shot out from the Phoenix, their designs a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and Ardrani finesse. They zipped towards the cloaked ships, penetrating their stealth fields with ease. Aria's voice cut through the tense silence on the bridge. "Commander, the ships have been identified. They belong to the Jarak." A collective gasp rippled through the crew. Even Vega, usually stoic, couldn't hide her concern. The Jarak were infamous throughout the galaxy for their ruthless pursuit of advanced technology, often leaving destruction in their wake. "Admiral Zen, Captain Krell, Zara, my ready room now," Louis ordered, his mind already formulating strategies. Once gathered, Admiral Zen wasted no time. "The Jarak have been a persistent threat to our research outposts. They've raided several, stealing artifacts and data. If they're here, then the outpost and everything in it is at risk," Louis finished, his expression grim. "We need to act fast. Opinions?" Captain Krell leaned forward, his Romulan features sharp in the room's low light. "We should strike first, use the element of surprise." "No," Louis interrupted. "We don't know the full situation. We attempt communication first." He turned to Zara. "Prepare for potential hostile action, but let's try to avoid a firefight if we can." Back on the bridge, Lewis took a deep breath before giving his next order. "Open a channel to the Jarak fleet." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a hulking reptilian alien. Its scales gleamed under harsh lighting, and its eyes held a predatory gleam. "I am Commander Grok of the Jarak Acquisition Force," it growled. "You have entered restricted space. Surrender your vessel and crew immediately." Louis stood tall, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "This is Commander Lewis Cooper of the Starship Phoenix. We're here on a peaceful mission to the Ardrani outpost. I'm afraid we can't comply with your demand." Grok's eyes narrowed. "The outpost and its contents are Jarak property. Surrender now or face destruction." "I don't think you understand the situation, Commander Grok," Lewis replied, his voice level. "The Phoenix is more than capable of defending itself. I strongly advise against any hostile action." The Jarak commander's response was a snarl. The view screen went dark and Lewis barely had time to shout, "Brace for impact!" before the first volley of energy weapons struck the Phoenix's shields. The ancient warship shuddered, but held firm. Lewis watched in amazement as the shields deflected the assault with ease, the energy dissipating harmlessly into space. "Shields holding at 98%, Arya reported, a hint of satisfaction in her synthetic voice. Louis allowed himself a small smile. "Well, that's certainly good to know." The Jarrak, however, were far from finished. As Lewis watched, their ships suddenly shifted formation, turning their weapons towards the defenseless Ardrani outpost. "They're targeting the outpost!" Zara cried out, her fingers flying over her console. Louis's mind raced. Direct engagement could lead to an escalation, potentially damaging the very outpost they were trying to protect. But allowing the Jarrak to destroy it was unthinkable. In that split second, Louis made his decision. "Arya, activate weapon system Alpha 7 from the asteroid cache." A sleek cylindrical device emerged from a hidden compartment on the Phoenix's hull. It hummed to life, emitting a soft blue glow. "Target the Jarrak fleet and fire," Louis commanded. A pulse of energy, invisible to the naked eye, shot out from the device. It washed over the Jarrak ships, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the alien vessels went dark, their weapons powering down and their engines falling silent. "Electromagnetic pulse successful," Arya reported. "Jarrak fleet's primary systems are offline." Louis didn't waste a moment. "Vega, assemble an away team. We're going into that outpost." As Vega led her team to the transporter room, Louis turned to Admiral Zen. "We don't have much time. The Jarrak won't stay down for long." The away team materialized inside the Ardrani outpost, phasers at the ready. They found themselves in a vast chamber filled with rows of stasis pods, each containing a motionless Ardrani. "They're alive," one of the Ardrani scientists on the team confirmed, checking the nearest pod. "But why are they in stasis?" Vega's sharp eyes caught something else. "Over here," she called, gesturing to a bank of computers. "Looks like the Jarrak were in the middle of a data transfer." As the team worked to revive the Ardrani researchers and secure the stolen data, Louis's voice came through their communicators. "Vega, we've got a problem. Area's detected a massive energy surge from one of the Jarrak ships. They're bringing their systems back online." Vega cursed under her breath. "Understood, Commander. We'll double our efforts." Back on the Phoenix, Louis faced a critical decision. The Jarrak ship was powering up faster than anticipated, and the away team needed more time. Captain Krell's voice cut through his thoughts. "Cooper, we should position the Phoenix between the outpost and the Jarrak. We can provide cover for the evacuation." Louis nodded, his hands already moving over the controls. The Phoenix responded beautifully, gliding into position with a grace that belied its size. As the first Jarrak ship flickered back to life, Louis felt the weight of command settle heavily on his shoulders. He could unleash the Phoenix's formidable weaponry, potentially ending the threat but risking a full-scale battle. Or he could focus on the evacuation, possibly leaving the outpost vulnerable. Time seemed to slow as Louis weighed his options. The bridge crew waited in tense silence, all eyes on their commander. In the distance, the Jarrak ship's lights began to pulse ominously, a clear sign that its weapon systems were coming online. Louis took a deep breath and opened a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, this is Commander Cooper. Prepare for immediate action. Our next move will determine not just the fate of this mission, but potentially the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy." His finger hovered over the weapons control, ready to unleash the Phoenix's power if necessary. But another part of him held back, searching for a solution that wouldn't lead to further bloodshed. The Jarrak ship loomed larger on the interface, its weapons ports glowing with building energy. Louis knew he had only seconds to make his choice. Whatever he decided, the consequences would ripple far beyond this moment, shaping the course of their mission and perhaps the future of humanity itself. Louis's finger hovered over the weapons control for a fraction of a second longer before he pulled it back. A different strategy crystallized in his mind. "Maintain our defensive position," he ordered, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "Continue the evacuation of the Ardrani outpost. Arya, activate our point defense systems. Create a protective barrier around both the Phoenix and the outpost." As the crew sprang into action, Louis opened a channel to the away team. "Vega, status report." "We're moving as fast as we can, Commander." Vega's voice crackled through the comm. "But there are dozens of stasis pods here. We need more time." "Understood. We'll buy you that time." The first Jarrak ship fully reactivated, its weapons ports glowing ominously. Without warning, it unleashed a barrage of energy weapons at the Phoenix. The ancient human warship shuddered under the assault, but its shields held firm, dispersing the energy harmlessly into space. "Shields holding at 92%, Area reported. Louis' eyes narrowed as he observed the tactical display. "They're trying to distract us," he muttered. "Area, scan the other Jarrak vessels." "Confirmed, Commander. 2 additional Jarrak ships are powering up. Their energy signatures are increasing rapidly." On the outpost, Vega and her team worked feverishly. The low hum of active stasis pods filled the air as they carefully disconnected each one, preparing them for transport. Nearby, Ardrani scientists furiously downloaded crucial research data onto portable devices, their fingers flying over holographic interfaces. "Hurry!" Vega urged, her eyes darting to the windows where flashes of weapon fire illuminated the space beyond. "We don't know how long the Phoenix can hold them off." Back on the bridge, Louis' comm channel chirped with an incoming transmission. The face of the mysterious Earth contact appeared on his personal screen. "Commander Cooper, we have critical intelligence," the figure said, their features obscured by shadows. "The Jarrak possess a prototype weapon capable of penetrating even the Phoenix's advanced shields. It's based on fragmented data from ancient human technology they previously acquired." Louis' blood ran cold. "How long until they can deploy it?" "Unknown, but you must act quickly." As the transmission cut out, Louis made a split-second decision. "Arya, activate the temporal stasis field." "Warning," Arya's voice rang out. "The temporal stasis field has not been tested in combat situations. Activating now." A shimmering bubble of energy enveloped the Phoenix and the outpost. Outside, the Jarrak ships seemed to slow to a crawl, their movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. "Divert all available power to evacuation efforts," Louis commanded. "Maximum capacity on transporters. Let's get our people out of there." The Phoenix hummed with increased activity as the transporters worked overtime, beaming aboard stasis pods, research materials, and personnel from the outpost. On the bridge, alarms blared as the strain on the ship's systems intensified. "Commander," Arya's voice cut through the cacophony, "the temporal stasis field is putting severe stress on our power systems. We cannot maintain it indefinitely." Louis nodded grimly. "Understood. How's the evacuation progressing?" 80% complete. Estimated time to completion, 3 minutes. As if on cue, Arya's tone shifted to one of urgent warning. "Alert! The Jarrak prototype weapon is powering up. It appears to be unaffected by the temporal stasis field." Louis' mind raced. They were out of time. "Drop the stasis field," he ordered. "Divert all non-essential power to reinforce the shields around the outpost." The shimmering bubble collapsed and time snapped back to its normal flow. The Jarrak ships, momentarily disoriented, paused in their attack. "Helm, bring us about," Louis commanded. "Position us between the outpost and the Jarrak fleet." The Phoenix moved with surprising agility for its size, sliding into place just as the Jarrak ships regained their bearings. Louis could almost feel the tension as the enemy vessels prepared to fire. "Arya, activate weapon system Beta 3. A sleek, previously hidden weapon emerged from the Phoenix's hull. It powered up with a high-pitched whine, targeting the lead Jarrak ship. "Fire!" A burst of concentrated electromagnetic energy shot forth, striking the Jarrak vessel with pinpoint accuracy. The ship's systems flickered and died, the prototype weapon powering down mere seconds before it would have fired. "Evacuation complete, Commander." Vega's voice came through the comm. "All personnel and materials secured." Louis allowed himself a brief moment of relief before refocusing. "Plot and escape vector. We need to get out of here before they regroup." The Phoenix's engines flared to life, propelling the ship away from the conflict zone. The Jarrak fleet, still recovering from the unexpected assault, fell behind quickly. As they put distance between themselves and danger, Louis surveyed the aftermath. The ship had sustained damage, with several systems operating at reduced capacity. The rescued Ardrani researchers, still in stasis, would need careful attention, and the recovered data on ancient human technology represented both a treasure trove and a potential risk. Before Louis could fully process their next steps, another encoded transmission came through. The message spoke of guardians of humanity's lost legacy, offering coordinates to a hidden space station where they could find sanctuary and resources. As the transmission ended, Louis found himself facing yet another critical decision. The offer of help was tempting, but accepting it would plunge them into a conflict spanning millennia. He looked around the bridge at his diverse crew of humans and aliens, all united in this quest to uncover humanity's past. "Arya," he said finally, "analyze the coordinates we've been given. I need to know what we're potentially walking into." As Arya began her analysis, Louis turned his attention to the immediate needs of his ship and crew. Whatever choice he made next would shape not just their mission, but potentially the future of the galaxy itself. As Arya began her analysis of the mysterious coordinates, Louis turned his attention to the immediate needs of his ship and crew. The damage sustained during their encounter with the Jarak required immediate attention, and the rescued Ardrani researchers in stasis pods needed careful monitoring. Over the next few days, the Phoenix hummed with activity as repair crews worked tirelessly to stabilize damaged systems. In the medical bay, Dr. Elise Chen and her team kept a vigilant watch over the Ardrani stasis pods, ensuring their life support systems remained functional. Louis spent hours poring over the data they had recovered from the Ardrani outpost, searching for clues about the ancient human technology that had drawn the Jarak's attention. The more he learned, the more questions arose, each piece of information hinting at a vast, forgotten legacy of human achievement. On the fourth day of their journey, Arya's voice cut through the quiet of Louis' quarters. "Commander, I have completed my analysis of the provided coordinates." Louis sat up, instantly alert. "What did you find?" "The coordinates lead to a previously unmapped sector of space, Commander. Long-range scans indicate the presence of a large structure, but its energy signature is unlike anything in our database." Louis nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. After a moment of contemplation, he made his decision. "Set a course for those coordinates, Arya. Full speed ahead." As the Phoenix altered its course, Louis called a meeting with his senior staff. In the ship's conference room, he briefed them on their new destination and the potential risks and rewards that awaited them. "We're heading into unknown territory," he concluded, looking around at the faces of his crew. "I need everyone at their best. Any questions?" Vega leaned forward, her expression serious. "Commander, are we certain this isn't a trap? The Jarak encounter proved there are forces out there actively working against us." Louis nodded, acknowledging her concern. "It's a risk, but one I believe we need to take. The intelligence we received about the Jarak's prototype weapon suggests there are players in this game with access to information we desperately need. If these guardians are genuine, they could be powerful allies." The journey to the coordinates took several days, during which the crew worked to bring the Phoenix back to peak operational status. As they approached their destination, tension on the bridge grew palpable. "We're entering the target sector, Commander," the helmsman announced. Louis leaned forward in his chair. "Arya, full sensor sweep. What are we looking at?" For a moment, the AI was silent. When it spoke, there was an almost imperceptible note of awe in its synthetic voice. "Commander, I'm detecting a massive structure directly ahead. It appears to be cloaked." "On screen," Louis ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing an empty expanse of space. But as Louis watched, a shimmering distortion began to take shape. It started small, barely noticeable, then expanded rapidly. In a matter of seconds, a colossal space station materialized before them, its sleek design unlike anything Louis had ever seen. "Incoming transmission," Arya reported. Louis straightened in his chair. "Put it through." A disembodied voice filled the bridge, speaking in crisp, accented English. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose." Louis took a deep breath, then responded. "This is Commander Louis Cooper of the Starship Phoenix. We were provided coordinates to this location by a contact claiming to be guardians of humanity's lost legacy." There was a pause, then the voice returned. "Transmit authentication code Alpha 79 Epsilon. Louis nodded to his communications officer, who quickly input the code they had received along with the coordinates. Another pause, longer this time. Then, authentication accepted. Welcome to Nexus Prime, Commander Cooper. You may proceed to Docking Bay 3. Transmitting approach vector now. As the Phoenix maneuvered towards the indicated docking bay, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a threshold. Whatever awaited them aboard Nexus Prime, he knew their mission, and perhaps the fate of humanity itself, was about to change forever. The docking procedure was smooth and efficient, a testament to the advanced technology at work. As the airlock sealed and the docking clamps engaged, Louis assembled a small team to accompany him. Vega for security, Zara, whose expertise in alien cultures could prove invaluable, and Admiral Zen, whose experience and diplomatic skills might be needed in the negotiations ahead. As they stepped through the airlock and onto Nexus Prime, Louis was struck by the stark contrast between the station's exterior and interior. While the outside had been all sleek lines and smooth surfaces, the interior was a breathtaking blend of advanced technology and classical human architecture. Vaulted ceilings arched overhead, adorned with intricate holographic displays showing star charts and data streams. A tall, imposing figure approached them, flanked by two guards in uniforms that seemed to shimmer and shift, adapting to their surroundings. The man's piercing blue eyes scanned the group, finally settling on Louis. "Commander Cooper," he said, his voice matching the one they had heard over the comms. "I am Commander Erebus, leader of Nexus Prime. Welcome to humanity's last bastion." Louis stepped forward, extending his hand. As Erebus grasped it in a firm handshake, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would be remembered as a turning point in his journey. The quest for humanity's lost legacy had led them here, to this hidden outpost of advanced technology and ancient secrets. What they would discover, and what price they might have to pay for that knowledge, remained to be seen. "Thank you for having us, Commander Erebus," Louis replied, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions surging through him. "We have a lot to discuss. We've come a long way, and I believe your organization might hold the key to understanding humanity's past and shaping its future." Erebus nodded, a hint of approval in his stern features. "Indeed, Commander. Follow me, and we'll talk more." As they walked through the station's corridors, Louis couldn't help but marvel at the seamless integration of advanced technology and classical human design. Holographic displays flickered alongside ornate tapestries, telling the story of humanity's journey among the stars. In a private conference room, Erebus briefed Louis and his team on the current galactic situation. The threat of the obliterators loomed large, their destructive force growing with each passing day. Louis listened intently, his mind racing as he weighed the potential risks and benefits of aligning with Nexus Prime. After hours of discussion and careful consideration, Louis made his decision. "Commander Erebus, we'd be honored to work alongside Nexus Prime. Our goals align, and I believe together we stand a better chance against the threats we face." Erebus's expression softened slightly. "A wise choice, Commander Cooper. We'll begin preparations immediately. There's an urgent matter that requires our attention." He activated a holographic display, showing a pulsating energy signature. "We've detected a surge of energy from what we believe to be an ancient human installation. Its power rivals anything we've seen before. We need to investigate and secure it before our enemies do." Louis leaned forward, studying the data. "Where is this installation located?" "In a binary star system, known for its treacherous solar flares and intense radiation," Erebus explained. "It's likely why it's remained hidden for so long. I'm assigning 2 of our best to join your crew for this mission." On cue, 2 individuals entered the room. Erebus introduced them. Marcus Valerius, our tactical expert specializing in ancient human military strategies, and Dr. Elena Chambers, a xenoarchaeologist focusing on lost human technologies. Louis shook hands with both, noting Marcus's firm grip and calculating gaze, and Elena's bright, inquisitive eyes. "Welcome aboard," he said. "We'll need your expertise for what lies ahead." Over the next few days, the Phoenix underwent extensive upgrades. Its hull was reinforced with regenerative nanomaterials, capable of self-repair. The weapons systems received a significant boost with the addition of phased energy projectors, designed to penetrate most known shield technologies. As the ship was being prepared, Louis and his expanded crew studied the data on the energy surge. Dr. Chambers worked closely with Zara, combining their knowledge to decipher the complex energy signature. The readings suggest a massive power source, Elena explained, her eyes alight with excitement. If it's what I think it is, we could be looking at a technological marvel beyond our current understanding. Marcus joined Louis on the bridge, discussing combat strategies that would integrate the Phoenix's new capabilities with ancient human battle tactics. The key is unpredictability, Marcus advised. Combine the old with the new in ways our enemies won't expect. Before their departure, Commander Erebus presented Louis with a final gift, a quantum entanglement communicator. This will allow instantaneous, untraceable communication between the Phoenix and Nexus Prime, Erebus explained. Use it if you need backup. As the Phoenix launched from Nexus Prime, its systems humming with newfound power, Louis felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. They were embarking on a mission that could change the course of galactic history. The journey to the binary star system was tense but uneventful. As they approached their destination, Arya's voice cut through the silence. Commander, I'm detecting multiple ships converging on our location. Louis's grip tightened on his chair. Composition? Scans show a mix of Jarak vessels, unknown ships with obliterator signatures, and several other factions, Arya reported. All appear to be drawn by the energy signature. Looks like we're not the only ones after this prize, Vega muttered. Louis nodded grimly. Activate cloaking technology. We're going in undetected. The Phoenix slipped past the gathering fleet, entering the planet's atmosphere. Solar storms battered the ship, playing havoc with their sensors. Louis's expert piloting, combined with the ship's upgraded systems, allowed them to navigate the treacherous conditions and land safely near the energy source. Louis assembled a ground team, himself, Vega, Marcus, Dr. Chambers, and 2 Ardrani scientists. Donning protective suits to shield against the harsh environment, they set out towards the energy signature. As they crested a hill, Louis stopped in his tracks. Before them stood the entrance to a massive underground complex, its architecture unmistakably human in origin. Ancient glyphs adorned the weathered metal doors, pulsing faintly with residual energy. Incredible, Dr. Chambers breathed, running her scanner over the entrance. The power systems are still active after all this time. Marcus stepped forward, studying the control panel. I recognize this configuration. Allow me, Commander. With practiced ease, Marcus input a series of commands. The ancient doors groaned open, revealing a dimly lit corridor stretching into the depths of the planet. As they entered, emergency power systems flickered to life, illuminating their path. The team moved cautiously, aware that they were walking through a piece of living history. Suddenly, a series of clicks echoed through the corridor. Marcus held up a hand, halting the group. Automated defense systems, he whispered. I can bypass them. Everyone, stay close and follow my lead. With Marcus's expertise guiding them, the team navigated through the complex's defenses, deactivating traps and avoiding trigger points. Louis marveled at the ingenuity of their ancient human ancestors, creating systems that could operate for millennia. Finally, they reached a vast chamber at the heart of the complex. In its center stood a colossal device, humming with impossibly strong power. Dr. Chambers' eyes widened as she scanned the machine. This is beyond anything I've ever seen. Commander, I believe we're looking at a prototype planet-wide terraforming engine. It could transform inhospitable worlds into habitable paradises within days. Before Louis could fully process the implications of this discovery, Arya's voice crackled through his communicator. Commander, we have a critical situation above ground. The ships we detected earlier have begun landing. Ground forces are converging on your location. Louis's mind raced. They had found a technological marvel that could reshape the galaxy, but now they were trapped underground with hostile forces closing in. He looked at his team, each member waiting for his command. The next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of humanity itself. Lewis's mind raced as he assessed their precarious situation. The terraforming engine hummed behind them, a testament to humanity's forgotten ingenuity and power. But that same power now threatened to bring destruction upon them all. "Arya, what's the status of the hostile forces?" Lewis asked, his voice tense but controlled. "Multiple ships have begun landing procedures," Arya reported. "Ground forces are deploying and converging on your location. Estimated time until contact, 15 minutes. Lewis turned to his team, each face a mix of persistence and apprehension. "We need to secure this chamber and protect the terraforming engine at all costs. Vega, Marcus, set up a defensive perimeter using the portable shield generators from the Phoenix. Dr. Chambers, I need you and the Ardrani scientists to download everything you can about this device. Focus on schematics and operational data." As his team sprang into action, Lewis pulled out the quantum entanglement communicator. The sleek device pulsed with an otherworldly energy as he activated it, establishing an instant connection to Nexus Prime. "Commander Erebus, this is Lewis Cooper. We've discovered something beyond our wildest expectations, but we're about to be overrun. We need immediate reinforcements." Erebus's voice came through, clear and sharp. "Understood, Commander. I'm mobilizing our rapid response team now. What are we up against?" Louis quickly relayed the information about the various factions closing in on their position. "It's a powder keg down here, Erebus. Everyone wants a piece of this technology." "Hold your position, Cooper. Help is on the way," Erebus assured him. "But it will take time for us to reach you. You'll need to hold out until then." As Lewis ended the transmission, he saw Dr. Chambers frantically working at a console, her fingers flying over alien controls. "Commander," she called out, her voice tinged with excitement and urgency. "I think I can activate this device. It might buy us some time." Lewis weighed the risks. Activating an unknown piece of ancient technology could be dangerous, but they were running out of options. "Do it," he ordered. Dr. Chambers input a series of commands, and the terraforming engine roared to life. The chamber shook and waves of energy pulsed outward. The air crackled with power, and Louis felt the hairs on his arms stand on end. "Arya, what's happening up there?" Lewis asked. "The energy pulses are causing significant interference with the invading forces' equipment," Arya reported. "Their advance has slowed, but they're adapting quickly." Suddenly, the chamber came alive around them. Holographic interfaces sprang into existence, bathing the room in a soft blue glow. Hidden compartments opened, revealing sleek, deadly-looking turrets that swiveled into position. A disembodied voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber. "Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating defense protocols." Lewis tensed, ready for a new threat, but the voice continued. "Authorized personnel identified. Human technology signatures confirmed. How may I assist you in defending this installation?" Realizing the installation's AI had awakened, Lewis stepped forward. "We need to protect this chamber and repel the invading forces. Can you help us?" "Affirmative," the AI responded. "I have full control over this facility's defense systems. I await your strategic input, Commander." As Louis began coordinating with the AI, integrating its capabilities with their own defenses, the first sounds of battle echoed through the ancient corridors. The invaders had breached the outer defenses and were pushing inward. "Vega, Marcus, hold the main entrance," Louis commanded. "Use the AI's systems to your advantage. Dr. Chambers, keep working on decrypting that data. We need to know everything about this terraforming engine and what else might be hidden here." Louis activated his comlink to the Phoenix. "Arya, we need air support. Use the ship's weapons to disable any enemy vessels attempting to land reinforcements." As chaos erupted around them, Lewis stood at the center of the storm, directing their defense. The AI's turrets fired with precision, using non-lethal containment measures to incapacitate the intruders. Vega and Marcus fought with skill and tenacity, their movements a deadly dance as they pushed back wave after wave of attackers. Through it all, Dr. Chambers worked tirelessly, her eyes wide with wonder as she delved deeper into the ancient system's secrets. "Commander," she called out, her voice barely audible over the sounds of battle. "You need to see this." Louis made his way to her console, ducking as energy blasts sizzled overhead. "What is it?" "This isn't just a terraforming engine," Dr. Chambers explained, her words tumbling out in a rush of excitement. "It's part of something called Project Genesis. There are more installations like this one, spread across the galaxy. They were meant to rapidly rehabilitate and colonize vast areas of space in case of a catastrophe." The implications hit Louis like a physical blow. The power to reshape entire worlds, to bring life to barren planets or reduce thriving ecosystems to dust. In the wrong hands, it could be a weapon of unimaginable destruction. Before he could fully process this revelation, his communicator crackled to life. Commander Erebus's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Cooper, our reinforcements are en route, but they've encountered heavy resistance from Obliterator forces. And there's more. We've detected a massive Obliterator fleet heading your way. They're led by someone known as the Arbiter. Our intel suggests this is one of their most formidable commanders." Lewis's mind raced, weighing their options. They could attempt to extract with the data they'd gathered, destroying the installation to keep it out of enemy hands. Or they could stand their ground, fighting to protect this piece of humanity's legacy and its incredible potential. In that moment, Lewis made his decision. The Genesis project was too valuable, too important to abandon. "We're staying," he announced to his team. "Dr. Chambers, keep working on unlocking the full capabilities of this engine. Everyone else, prepare for a fight. We're going to hold this position no matter what." As his team rallied around him, Louis turned his attention to the AI. "We need to fortify our defenses. What else can this installation do?" The AI's response was immediate. "Activating additional defense layers, deploying energy shields, combat drones, and holographic decoys." The chamber hummed with newfound energy as hidden systems came online. Outside, the sounds of battle intensified as the Obliterator fleet drew nearer. Louis knew the real test was yet to come. The Arbiter was approaching, and with them, a fight that would determine not just the fate of this installation, but potentially the future of humanity itself. Lewis stood firm, the pulsing power of the terraforming engine at his back, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle for Project Genesis had only just begun. The ground beneath their feet trembled as the Obliterator fleet entered the planet's atmosphere, their advanced ships casting long shadows over the barren landscape. Louis's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "Arya, give me a full tactical readout of the incoming fleet." "Analyzing, Commander," Arya responded. "The Obliterator ships are far more advanced than our previous adversaries. Their weapon systems and shielding technology surpass anything we've encountered so far." Lewis turned to the ancient AI. "We need to hide this facility. Can you activate any concealment measures?" The AI's voice resonated through the chamber. "Affirmative, initiating planet-wide cloaking field." A low hum filled the air as the cloaking technology engaged. Outside, the landscape shimmered and distorted, obscuring the exact location of the installation from prying eyes. "Dr. Chambers, status report," Lewis called out, his voice tight with urgency. The scientist looked up from her console, her eyes wide with excitement. "Commander, I've made a breakthrough. This terraforming engine, it's capable of so much more than we initially thought. With some modifications, we could reconfigure it to emit a massive electromagnetic pulse." Louis's mind raced with the possibilities. "An EMP? Could it disable the Obliterator fleet?" Dr. Chambers nodded vigorously. "Any non-shielded technology within the planet's orbit would be rendered inoperable. It could level the playing field against their superior tech." Before Louis could respond, the chamber shook violently. Vega's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, we've got a problem. A new player has entered the game." Louis rushed to a nearby view screen, his breath catching in his throat at the sight before him. A towering figure clad in pitch-black armor stood amidst the chaos of the battlefield, effortlessly coordinating the various factions into a cohesive fighting force. "The Arbiter," Lewis whispered, recognizing the infamous Obliterator commander from intelligence briefings. Marcus's voice joined the comm chatter. "Sir, our defenses are holding, but barely. The automated systems are taking a beating, and we're vastly outnumbered." Lewis made his decision. "Dr. Chambers, reconfigure that engine. We're going to use the EMP. Vega, Marcus, fall back to our position. We need to consolidate our defenses. As his team scrambled to follow orders, Lewis activated the quantum entanglement communicator. Commander Erebus's holographic form flickered to life. Cooper, what's your status? Erebus asked, his face etched with concern. We're under heavy assault, Louis reported. The Obliterators are here in force, led by the Arbiter himself. How long until reinforcements arrive? Erebus's expression grew grim. Our forces have encountered significant resistance. ETA is still 1 hour out. You'll need to hold your position until then. Lewis nodded, his teeth clenched. Understood. We'll do what we have to. As the transmission ended, Louis turned to Dr. Chambers. Is it ready? She nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. Initiating electromagnetic pulse now. The terraforming engine hummed to life, its energy output spiking dramatically. A wave of invisible force rippled outward, washing over the installation and beyond. Outside, the invading force's equipment sparked and died, their ships plummeting from the sky. But the victory was short-lived. The pulse had also affected some of the installation's systems, leaving them vulnerable. And through the chaos, one figure remained unaffected, the Arbiter, his armor gleaming as he strode purposefully towards the heart of the facility. Louis grabbed a nearby energy rifle, its weight reassuring in his hands. Vega, Marcus, cover the main entrance. Dr. Chambers, keep working on unlocking the engine's full potential. I'll deal with our uninvited guest. As Lewis moved to confront the Arbiter, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just another battle. The fate of humanity's forgotten legacy hung in the balance, and he was the only thing standing between it and total obliteration. The installation's corridors echoed with the sound of heavy footsteps as Louis and the Arbiter circled each other. The Obliterator commander's armor seemed to absorb the light around it, creating an aura of darkness. You fight well, human, the Arbiter's voice boomed, distorted by his helmet, but you cannot hope to stand against the inevitable. Lewis ducked behind a pillar as a barrage of energy blasts scorched the air where he had been standing. Why are you doing this? He called out. Why erase humanity's past? The Arbiter's response was punctuated by the sound of his heavy footsteps. Because the Empire's legacy is a cancer that must be excised from the galaxy, we were once like you, filled with the same misguided ambition. Louis's mind reeled at the implication. You were human? Once, the Arbiter admitted, his voice tinged with disgust. But we evolved beyond your limitations, beyond the flaws that led to the Empire's downfall. Their deadly dance continued through the installation's winding corridors, each combatant using every advantage they could find. Lewis relied on his knowledge of the facility's layout, using hidden passages and automated defenses to keep the physically superior Arbiter at bay. As they neared the chamber housing the terraforming engine, Lewis realized the Arbiter's true goal. He sprinted ahead, bursting into the room where Dr. Chambers was still working feverishly at the controls. He's coming for the engine, Louis shouted. We need to... His words were cut short as the Arbiter crashed through the doorway, his armor barely scratched despite the battles he had fought to reach this point. The Obliterator commander raised his weapon, aiming not at Lewis or Dr. Chambers, but at the terraforming engine itself. In that split second, Louis made a desperate gamble. He lunged for the engine's control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he initiated a partial activation sequence. The chamber came alive around them. The once sterile walls sprouted vegetation. The air grew thick with humidity, and the floor beneath their feet shifted and churned like living soil. The Arbiter stumbled, caught off guard by the sudden transformation. Louis seized the moment of confusion, tackling the Arbiter with all his might. They grappled amidst the rapidly changing environment, the once deadly energy weapon forgotten in the primal struggle. As they fought, the installation's AI spoke, its voice calm amidst the chaos. Commander, I'm detecting an incoming transmission. A new faction has entered orbit around the planet. Louis managed to break free from the Arbiter's grasp, putting some distance between them. What new faction? He gasped, trying to catch his breath. The AI's response was drowned out by a deafening roar from above. Through the chamber's viewing ports, Louis could see a massive warship descending through the atmosphere, dwarfing even the Obliterator fleet. The Arbiter, too, had paused in his assault, his helmet tilted upward to observe the new arrival. "Impossible," he murmured, a note of fear creeping into his voice for the first time. As Lewis watched the gigantic vessel approach, he realized that the already complex situation had just become infinitely more complicated. The battle for control of humanity's legacy was a long way to go, and the arrival of this new power could tip the scales in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. With the Arbiter momentarily distracted, Louis glanced at Dr. Chambers, who nodded silently. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, defending the secrets of their ancestors and fighting for a future where humanity could reclaim its rightful place among the stars. Stars. The tense standoff was abruptly interrupted by a deafening roar that shook the entire installation. Louis's eyes widened as he saw the massive warship descending through the atmosphere, its sleek design unlike anything he had ever encountered. The vessel's sheer size dwarfed even the formidable Obliterator fleet, casting an ominous shadow over the battlefield. The installation's AI spoke again, its voice steady despite the chaos. "Commander, the incoming vessel is broadcasting a message on all frequencies." Before Louis could respond, a commanding voice filled the chamber, echoing through every communication system. "This is Captain Thaddeus Blackstone of the Sovereign. We demand immediate cessation of hostilities and surrender of this installation to our control." Lewis exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Chambers, noting the mixture of fear and curiosity in her eyes. He made a split-second decision, activating the installation's communication systems while signaling to his team to maintain their defensive positions. "This is Commander Louis Cooper," he responded, his voice firm despite the uncertainty churning in his gut. "We're currently engaged in combat with Obliterator forces. Who exactly are you, and what is your stake in this conflict?" Captain Blackstone's voice returned, tinged with a hint of arrogance. "We are the progenitors, direct descendants of the ancient human empire's ruling class. We have returned to reclaim our ancestral technologies and restore humanity to its former glory." As Lewis processed this revelation, he noticed movement from the corner of his eye. The Arbiter, seizing the moment of distraction, launched a surprise attack. Lewis barely managed to dodge a vicious swipe from the Obliterator commander's energy blade, the weapon leaving a scorching gash in the wall where his head had been moments before. Louis rolled away, using his knowledge of the installation's layout to his advantage. He ducked into a narrow corridor, activating a series of defensive traps as he retreated. Behind him, he heard the Arbiter's frustrated roar as holographic decoys and energy barriers sprang to life. "Dr. Chambers," Louis shouted into his communicator as he ran. "Status report." Her voice came through, breathless but excited. "Commander, I've made a breakthrough. The terraforming engine, it's not just capable of reshaping environments, it can interface with and control other Genesis installations across the galaxy." Lewis skidded to a halt, his mind blown from the implications. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely," Dr. Chambers confirmed. "Whoever controls this installation could potentially command a network of world-shaping technologies." Louis quickly relayed this information to both Captain Blackstone and Commander Erebus, hoping to emphasize the need for cooperation against the Obliterator threat. However, the progenitors seemed to view this as confirmation of their right to claim the installation. "This changes nothing," Captain Blackstone declared. "These technologies are our birthright. Stand down and surrender the installation immediately." Before Louis could respond, the AI's voice cut in. "Commander, progenitor forces have breached our outer defenses. They appear to be immune to the electromagnetic disruption." Louis cursed under his breath. The situation was spiraling out of control. He activated his team-wide communication channel. "Vega, Marcus, implement guerrilla tactics. Use the transforming environment to your advantage. Funnel them into kill zones if you can." As acknowledgments came through from his team, Louis made his way to the installation's central control room. He worked furiously with the AI to initiate a full lockdown protocol, sealing off sections of the facility to contain the invading forces. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor behind him. The Arbiter had broken through the defensive traps and was closing in fast. Lewis sealed the final blast door just as the Obliterator commander's fist slammed into it, leaving a sizable dent in the reinforced metal. You cannot hide forever, human. The Arbiter's distorted voice boomed through the door. The legacy of your empire will be erased, one installation at a time. Louis ignored the taunt, focusing on the tactical displays before him. The space battle above the planet had intensified with the arrival of the Nexus Prime reinforcements, led by Commander Erebus. The sky was alight with weapons fire and explosions as the three factions clashed in orbit. On the ground, the situation was equally chaotic. The installation's automated defenses struggled to differentiate between the multiple hostile forces, leading to indiscriminate fire that caused casualties on all sides. "Dr. Chambers," Louis called out, his voice tight with urgency. "How close are you to finishing the reconfiguration?" "Almost there," she responded. "Just a few more minutes." Louis's fingers flew over the control panels, trying to buy her the time she needed. He directed the remaining defensive systems to create choke points, slowing the advance of both the obliterators and the progenitors. Just as the Arbiter began to cut through the sealed blast door, Dr. Chambers' triumphant voice rang out. "It's done, Commander! You should now have remote access to the terraforming engine's controls." Louis's eyes darted to a newly activated console, its surface glowing with potential. With this power at his fingertips, he could reshape the entire battlefield, potentially ending the conflict in one fell swoop. But the risk of untold destruction and loss of life burdened immensely on his conscience. The Arbiter burst through the weakened door, his armor smoking from the effort. At the same moment, alarms blared as progenitor forces breached the final defensive perimeter. Louis's hand hovered over the terraforming controls as he faced the advancing Arbiter. Time seemed to slow as he weighed his options, knowing that his next decision would have far-reaching consequences for all involved in this multifaceted conflict. The fate of the installation, the Genesis project, and potentially the future of humanity hung in the balance. Louis steeled himself, prepared to make a choice that would alter the course of the battle, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Louis's hand moved decisively, activating the terraforming engine with precise controlled inputs. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The chamber around them began to shift and transform, dense vegetation sprouting from the once sterile surfaces. Water bubbled up from newly formed cracks in the floor, rapidly filling channels that carved their way through the changing landscape. The Arbiter, caught mid-lunge, stumbled as the ground beneath him undulated. A thick wall of intertwining vines burst forth, separating him from Louis. The Obliterator Commander's energy blade slashed furiously at the organic barrier, but for every vine he cut, two more grew to take its place. Louis didn't waste the opportunity. He sprinted towards a newly formed opening in the chamber wall, calling out to Dr. Chambers as he ran. "Doctor, with me! We need to regroup with the others." As they navigated the rapidly changing corridors of the installation, Louis activated his comlink. "Vega, Marcus, report in. What's your status?" Vega's voice crackled through, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. "We're holding our own, Commander, but barely. These progenitor troops are something else. Their tech is letting them adapt to the changes faster than we can." "Fall back to Junction Point Alpha," Louis ordered. "We'll rendezvous there and formulate a new strategy." The once familiar layout of the installation had become a maze of twisting passages and organic growth. Louis and Dr. Chambers navigated carefully, using the doctor's datapad to track the terraforming engine's influence and predict safe routes. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Vega and Marcus, who were backing away from a group of advancing progenitor soldiers. The elite troops moved with practiced precision, their armor seeming to shimmer and adapt to the changing environment. "Down!" Louis shouted, pulling Dr. Chambers to the ground as Marcus lobbed a concussion grenade over their heads. The explosion sent the progenitor soldiers reeling, giving the team a moment to retreat into a defensible position. As they caught their breath, Dr. Chambers' eyes lit up with excitement. "Commander, I've made a breakthrough. The terraforming engine's influence, I think I can extend it beyond the installation, possibly to the entire planet." Louis's mind raced with the implications. That could give us a significant advantage, but the risk... His thoughts were interrupted by a transmission from orbit. Commander Erebus's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Cooper, We're taking heavy losses up here. The Sovereign's firepower is unlike anything we've ever encountered. We can't hold out much longer." Before Louis could respond, another voice cut in. Captain Blackstone of the Progenitors. "This is your final warning, Cooper. Surrender the installation now, or we'll be forced to take more drastic measures." The pressure of the moment greatly troubled on Louis. He glanced at his team, seeing drive mixed with fear in their eyes. Then, unexpectedly, a familiar voice spoke in his ear. "Commander Cooper, this is Aria," the AI from the Phoenix said. "I've completed my analysis of the terraforming data. There's something you need to know about the Phoenix." Louis listened intently as Aria explained the ship's hidden capabilities. The revelation of the Phoenix's potential to interface with the entire Genesis network changed everything. A plan began to form in Louis's mind. "Listen up, team," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We're changing objectives. We need to get back to the Phoenix. Dr. Chambers, your data is the key. We're going to use the ship to take control of the Genesis network before anyone else can." Vega raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly are we supposed to get there with half the galaxy trying to kill us?" Louis activated a holographic display of the installation. "We'll use the terraforming engine to our advantage. Doctor, can you create a path to the emergency exit near the landing site?" Dr. Chambers nodded, her fingers flying over her datapad. The installation shuddered as another wave of transformation swept through it. Walls shifted, floors tilted, and new passages opened up. "Move out," Louis ordered. "Vega, take point. Marcus, cover our 6. Doctor, stay between us." They advanced through the ever-changing corridors, encountering pockets of resistance from both Obliterator and Progenitor forces. The team worked in perfect sync, years of training and shared experiences evident in every movement. As they neared the emergency exit, a familiar, distorted voice echoed through the passage behind them. "Did you think you could escape me so easily, human?" The Arbiter charged towards them, his armor smoking and scarred, but still intimidating. Louis shouted for his team to keep moving as he turned to face the Obliterator commander. "I don't need to escape you," Louis said, activating a series of commands on his wrist computer. "I just need to slow you down." The passage between them suddenly erupted with growth. Thick, thorny vines entangled the Arbiter, their sharp spines finding gaps in his armor. As the Obliterator struggled against the organic restraints, Louis turned and sprinted after his team. They burst out of the installation into the harsh light of the planet's surface. In the distance, the Phoenix stood waiting, its sleek form a stark contrast to the chaos of the battlefield around it. The sky above was alight with the flashes of ship-to-ship combat, a stark reminder of the larger conflict at stake. "There's our ticket out of here," Louis said, pointing towards the ship. "Let's move." As they made their way across the open ground, dodging weapons fire and navigating the treacherous terrain, Louis knew that their true challenge was only beginning. The race to control the Genesis network would determine not just their fate, but potentially that of the entire galaxy. With enemies closing in from all sides and time running out, Louis and his team pushed forward, the Phoenix growing larger in their vision. The next few moments would be crucial, and Louis steeled himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. With enemies closing in from all sides and time running out, Louis and his team pushed forward, the Phoenix growing larger in their vision. The harsh terrain of the planet's surface stretched before them, a battlefield scarred by ongoing skirmishes between Obliterator ground forces and Progenitor troops. Louis's mind raced as he assessed the situation. "We need cover," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Dr. Chambers, can we use the terraforming data to our advantage?" The scientist nodded, her fingers flying over her datapad. "I can trigger localized environmental changes. It won't be stable, but it should provide enough cover for our approach." "Do it," Louis ordered. As they moved, the ground beneath their feet began to shift. Dense vegetation erupted from the barren soil, forming natural barriers and concealing their movements. Thick vines intertwined to create makeshift walls, while newly formed rock formations provided additional cover. Vega took point, her keen eyes scanning for threats as they navigated the rapidly changing landscape. Marcus brought up the rear, his weapon at the ready. They had barely covered half the distance to the Phoenix when a distorted roar echoed behind them. Louis glanced back to see the Arbiter emerging from the installation, flanked by a squad of elite obliterator troops. "They're on our tail," Louis growled. "Dr. Chambers, get to the Phoenix with that data. It's our only hope. Vega, Marcus, we're buying her time." Without hesitation, Dr. Chambers sprinted ahead, clutching her datapad to her chest. Louis, Vega, and Marcus fanned out, using the newly formed terrain to set up a defensive position. The air crackled with weapons fire as the obliterators advanced. Vega's precision shots found gaps in their armor, while Marcus's tactical acumen allowed them to anticipate and counter the enemy's movements. Louis coordinated their efforts, all while continuing to manipulate the environment around them. Above, the space battle raged on. The comm channel crackled to life with Commander Erebus's voice. "Cooper, we've managed to disable key systems on the Sovereign. They won't be able to deploy more ground troops for now. Make it count." Louis acknowledged the transmission, grateful for the small advantage. He directed his team in a fighting retreat, slowly giving ground while inflicting maximum damage on their pursuers. As they neared the Phoenix, Louis spotted movement ahead. A group of progenitor soldiers had set up a defensive perimeter around the ship. Led by a stern-faced officer, Louis recognized as Major Aldrich Starborn. "Dr. Chambers, hold position," Louis called out, but it was too late. The scientist had already triggered another terraforming pulse. The ground beneath the progenitor forces buckled and heaved, sending them stumbling. In the confusion, Dr. Chambers slipped past their line and reached the Phoenix's entrance. Louis, Vega, and Marcus seized the opportunity. They made a final push, sprinting towards the ship. The Arbiter's enraged roar spurred them on, the sound of heavy footsteps growing closer by the second. As they reached the Phoenix, Aria's voice emanated from the ship's external speakers. "Commander Cooper, the ship's hidden systems are nearly ready. However, integrating the terraforming data and activating the Genesis network interface will require several minutes of downtime." Louis cursed under his breath. They were so close, but those few minutes might as well have been an eternity, with enemies closing in from all sides. "We hold here," Louis decided, his voice firm. "Vega, Marcus, secure the perimeter. Use the ship's external defenses and the terrain to our advantage. Dr. Chambers and I will handle the integration process." As Vega and Marcus moved to defensive positions, Louis joined Dr. Chambers at the ship's main console. The Phoenix's hull began to shimmer and change, responding to the influx of new data. Outside, the battle intensified. The Arbiter led a frontal assault, while Major Starborn regrouped his progenitor forces for another attack. Weapons fire lit up the area around the Phoenix, the ship's adaptive shielding barely holding against the onslaught. Louis's hands flew over the control interface, his focus absolute as he worked to complete the integration. Dr. Chambers called out readings and made adjustments, their teamwork flawless despite the chaos surrounding them. A massive shadow fell over the battlefield, momentarily silencing the fighting. Louis looked up to see Commander Erebus's ship descending through the atmosphere, its massive form a testament to human engineering. "Cooper!" Erebus's voice boomed over the comm. "Whatever you're planning, do it fast. We can't hold this position for long." Louis nodded, even though Erebus couldn't see him. He turned back to the console, where the final activation sequence awaited. His hand hovered over the controls as the ship continued to transform around them. The battling forces pressed closer, and Erebus's vessel loomed in the sky above. In that moment, with the fate of the Genesis network hanging in the balance, Louis knew that his next action would shape the course of the conflict and reveal the true potential of humanity's ancient legacy. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next, and pressed the activation sequence. The Phoenix's hull began to shimmer and ripple, its sleek form morphing before their eyes. Louis felt a surge of energy coursing through the ship's systems, the ancient technology integrating seamlessly with the terraforming data. "Brace yourselves!" Louis shouted as he completed the final activation. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the Phoenix, expanding outward in a massive shockwave. The battling forces on the ground suddenly found their weapons inert, the pulse disabling all non-Genesis technology in its path. Even Commander Erebus's descending ship faltered, its engines sputtering as it hung suspended in the air. Louis's fingers danced across the control interface, now pulsing with newfound power. The ground beneath their feet began to shift and reform. Massive land bridges rose from the barren soil, while deep trenches and towering walls separated the warring factions. "Vega, Marcus, get everyone on board now," Louis ordered, his eyes fixed on the rapidly changing landscape. As his team scrambled to comply, Louis caught sight of a familiar figure charging through the chaos. The Arbiter, seemingly unaffected by the energy pulse, barreled towards the Phoenix with single-minded commitment. "Louis, we've got company!" Vega shouted, laying down suppressing fire as she backed up the entry ramp. The Arbiter leaped, his enhanced strength carrying him through the ship's newly formed energy barrier. Louis barely had time to react before the Obliterator commander was upon him, massive fists swinging with deadly precision. Louis ducked and weaved, using his smaller size to his advantage as he grappled with the Arbiter on the entry ramp. The Phoenix's hull continued to shift around them, organic tendrils sprouting from the metal surface. As they fought, Louis caught glimpses of the battlefield beyond. Commander Erebus's ship had recovered, resuming its descent as Nexus Prime forces poured onto the field. The progenitors, led by Major Starborn, were regrouping, their eyes fixed on the prize that was the Phoenix. A crushing blow from the Arbiter sent Louis stumbling back. He tasted blood in his mouth, his vision blurring from the impact. In that moment of desperation, Louis reached out with his mind, connecting to the Phoenix's terraforming capabilities. The ramp beneath their feet erupted with dense vegetation. Thick vines wrapped around the Arbiter's legs, momentarily halting his advance. Louis seized the opportunity, breaking free from the Obliterator's grasp and sprinting into the ship. "Aria, status report," Louis called out as he raced through the transformed interior. "Alert! Unauthorized entry detected in the cargo hold," the AI responded. "Progenitor signature identified. Major Aldrich Starborn has infiltrated the ship." Louis cursed under his breath, changing course towards the engine room. He could hear the sounds of combat outside as Vega, Marcus, and the newly arrived Nexus Prime operatives held the line against the regrouping enemy forces. The ship's corridors were a strange blend of advanced technology and organic growth. Pulsing veins of energy ran along the walls, while leafy tendrils curled around control panels. Louis navigated this transformed landscape, his heart pounding in his ears. He burst into the engine room just as Major Starborn reached for a crucial power coupling. Without hesitation, Louis hurled himself at the progenitor soldier, tackling him away from the ship's vital systems. They grappled fiercely, crashing through the ship's altered interior. Starborn's military training was evident in every move, but Louis's desperation and familiarity with the Phoenix gave him an edge. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, Cooper?" Starborn grunted as they struggled. "The Genesis network is too powerful for any one faction to control." Louis didn't waste breath on a response. He channeled the ship's energy, causing the floor beneath Starborn to suddenly tilt. The progenitor lost his footing, giving Louis the opening he needed. A swift, decisive blow rendered Starborn unconscious. Panting heavily, Louis dragged himself back to the control interface. Outside, he could hear the roar of Commander Erebus's ship touching down, adding to the chaos of the three-way battle raging around the Phoenix. "Everyone, get on board now! We're leaving!" Louis shouted into his comm as he initiated the launch sequence. The Phoenix shuddered as its newly integrated systems came to life. Louis felt the ship's consciousness meshing with his own, the full power of the Genesis network at his fingertips. As the ship began to rise, Louis faced an impossible choice. The terraforming technology gave him the power to reshape the planet's surface, potentially ending the conflict below. But the cost in lives and destruction would be immense. The alternative was to flee, maintaining control of the Genesis network, but leaving the fate of those on the surface uncertain. The weight of the decision pressed down on Louis as the Phoenix ascended through the atmosphere. Vega limped onto the bridge, her armor scorched and dented. "We're all aboard, Commander. What's our next move?" Louis's hands hovered over the controls, the power to reshape worlds literally at his fingertips. The chaotic battlefield fell away beneath them as they broke through the cloud cover, the vast expanse of space opening up before them. In that moment, with the future of the cosmos hanging in the balance, Louis made his choice. Decision. With a deep breath, he engaged the Phoenix's advanced propulsion systems, sending the ship rocketing towards the upper atmosphere. The ship shuddered as it broke through the planet's gravitational pull, emerging into the chaos of the ongoing space battle. Louis's hands danced across the control interface, his mind melding with the ship's newly integrated Genesis technology. "Hold on!" he shouted as debris from a nearby explosion hurtled towards them. Instead of trying to evade the incoming wreckage, Louis reached out with his consciousness, tapping into the Genesis network. The debris around the Phoenix began to shift and coalesce, forming a protective barrier that deflected incoming fire and shielded them from detection. Vega's eyes widened as she watched the impossible feat unfold before her. "How are you doing that?" "It's the Genesis tech," Louis replied, his voice strained with concentration. "It's not just for terraforming planets. We can manipulate matter on a smaller scale too." Taking advantage of the momentary confusion among the warring fleets, Louis directed the Phoenix towards a dense asteroid field looming in the distance. The ship weaved through the massive rocks with unnatural agility, its enhanced sensors mapping out safe passage through the treacherous terrain. As they penetrated deeper into the field, Aria's voice rang out. "Anomaly detected. There appears to be an artificial structure embedded within one of the larger asteroids." Louis guided the ship closer, revealing a concealed docking bay of unmistakably human design. Without hesitation, he maneuvered the Phoenix into the hidden hangar, engaging the docking clamps as the massive doors sealed behind them. "Everyone, gear up," Louis ordered as he rose from the pilot's seat. "We don't know what we'll find in there." The crew disembarked, weapons at the ready, only to find themselves standing in an ancient but intact command center. Dust-covered consoles lined the walls, their displays flickering to life as they approached. Dr. Chambers ran her hand over one of the terminals, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is incredible. It must be an auxiliary control center for the Genesis network." Louis nodded, his mind already connecting with the station's systems through his link with the Phoenix. "There's a wealth of information here, data on other Genesis installations across the galaxy." As the team explored the command center, Aria's urgent voice came through their comms. Multiple ships detected entering the asteroid field. Obliterator, Progenitor, and Nexus Prime signatures identified. "They've tracked us," Vega growled, moving towards the hangar entrance. "Marcus, help me set up a defensive perimeter. We can't let them take this place." Louis turned to Dr. Chambers. "We need to download everything we can from these systems and integrate it with the Phoenix. It's our only chance of staying ahead." As they worked feverishly to transfer the data, Louis stumbled upon a piece of information that made his blood run cold. "There's a master control hub," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "A central point that can control the entire Genesis network. It's in an uncharted sector, but with this data, we can find it." The implications were staggering. Whoever controlled that hub would have the power to reshape the galaxy at will. The responsibility of such knowledge greatly troubled on Louis as he heard the distant sounds of battle growing closer. A plan began to form in his mind. It was risky, but it was their only chance. "Aria, activate all dormant Genesis seeds in the vicinity of the asteroid field." The AI complied, and suddenly the space around them came alive. Asteroids began to shift and transform, growing organic structures and altering their trajectories. The incoming enemy fleets found themselves in a maze of constantly changing terrain, their standard navigation systems useless in the face of such chaos. "Everyone back to the Phoenix!" Louis shouted, severing the connection with the command center as the last of the data finished transferring. They raced back to the ship, the sounds of confusion and panic from the enemy fleets echoing through their comm channels. Louis took the helm, guiding the Phoenix out of the hidden hangar and into the transformed asteroid field. The ship's enhanced systems allowed them to navigate the ever-shifting maze with relative ease, while their pursuers struggled to keep pace. Debris and weapons fire filled the space around them as Louis pushed the Phoenix to its limits. A violent impact rocked the ship, alarms blaring as damage reports flooded in. The Genesis enhanced systems immediately began self-repairs, but Louis knew they couldn't take much more punishment. In a risky move, he focused the ship's terraforming abilities on a massive section of the asteroid field directly behind them. The space rocks began to collide and fragment, creating a dense wall of debris that cut off their pursuers. As they cleared the asteroid field, Louis punched in the coordinates for the uncharted sector containing the Genesis Master Control Hub. The ship's faster-than-light drive engaged, stars streaking past as they left the chaos behind. The crew let out a collective breath, the immediate danger past. But Louis knew their journey was nowhere near the end. The other factions would regroup and continue the chase, and the power of the Genesis network was a responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready to bear. As they traveled through the depths of space, an unexpected transmission cut through the silence. The message was garbled, but its content was clear enough to send a chill down Louis' spine. "Attention, Phoenix crew," a distorted voice intoned. "We are the true inheritors of humanity's legacy. The Genesis network is not what you believe it to be. Meet with us before you seek the Master Control Hub or risk unleashing forces beyond your comprehension." Louis exchanged wary glances with his crew as the transmission faded. The path ahead was suddenly far less certain, and the hope of the universe hung in the balance of their next decision. Louis's hand hovered over the ship's controls as he processed the unexpected transmission. The claim of being true inheritors of humanity's legacy sent a chill down his spine, but he couldn't afford to ignore any potential leads. "Arya, analyze that transmission," he ordered. "I want to know its origin and authenticity, but maintain our current course to the Master Control Hub." As the AI began its analysis, Louis felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through the ship. The newly integrated Genesis technology was interacting with the faster-than-light drive in ways he hadn't anticipated. The Phoenix shuddered, and for a moment, Louis feared they might tear apart. "Status report," he called out, his fingers dancing across the control panel to stabilize their flight. Dr. Chambers rushed to a nearby console, her eyes wide as she interpreted the data streaming across the screen. "The Genesis tech is enhancing our FTL capabilities," she explained, her voice a mix of awe and concern. "We're traveling at speeds I didn't think possible. At this rate, we'll reach the Master Control Hub in half the time we estimated." Louis nodded, feeling the strain of the ship around him. "Can we maintain structural integrity at these speeds?" "Barely," Vega replied, her hands flying over another set of controls. "I'm redirecting power to reinforce our shields and hull. It should hold, but we're pushing the Phoenix to its limits." As they raced through hyperspace, Dr. Chambers immersed herself in the ancient human data they had acquired. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional status update from Arya or the creaking of the ship's hull. Suddenly, Dr. Chambers gasped. "Louis, I've found something crucial," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "There's a fail-safe mechanism built into the Genesis network. It's designed to prevent misuse of the technology." Louis turned to her, his interest piqued. "What kind of fail-safe?" "It requires a specific genetic key to fully activate the Master Control Hub," she explained, pulling up a complex diagram on her screen. "Without it, we won't be able to access the network's full capabilities." Before Louis could respond, Arya's voice filled the bridge. "Alert! Exiting hyperspace in the vicinity of the provided coordinates." The swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel gave way to a star system unlike any they had encountered before. A massive gas giant dominated the view, surrounded by a multitude of moons. One of these satellites immediately caught Louis' attention. Its surface bore the unmistakable signs of ancient human terraforming. "That's our target," Louis declared, guiding the Phoenix towards the moon. As they entered its atmosphere, a network of energy beams suddenly crisscrossed the sky around them. "Automated defense systems," Vega shouted, her hands flying to the weapon controls. Louis raised a hand to stop her. "Wait," he said, closing his eyes and reaching out with his mind. He felt the Genesis technology within the ship responding, connecting to the ancient defenses that surrounded them. With careful concentration, he began to interface with the systems, searching for a way to bypass them without resorting to violence. The Phoenix weaved through the energy grid, narrowly avoiding beams that could have torn the ship apart. Louis's forehead beaded with sweat as he maintained the delicate connection, guiding them towards a massive structure on the moon's surface. Just as they prepared to land, Vega's voice cut through Louis's concentration. "Multiple ships entering the system. Obliterator, Progenitor and Nexus Prime signatures detected. Lewis cursed under his breath. Their unique warp signature must have led their pursuers right to them. We need to move fast, he said, bringing the Phoenix down near what appeared to be the entrance to a vast underground complex. Marcus, stay with the ship. Use the Genesis tech to create a defensive perimeter. The rest of you, with me. As they prepared to disembark, another transmission crackled through their comms. The same distorted voice from earlier spoke. Beware the traps within. Follow our instructions to navigate safely. Lewis hesitated, weighing the risks. After a moment's consideration, he made his decision. We'll proceed cautiously, but we'll use their information. It's our best chance of reaching the hub before our pursuers. Leading a small team consisting of himself, Vega, and Dr. Chambers, Lewis entered the ancient facility. The air inside was stale but breathable, and dormant systems flickered to life as they passed. They encountered their first challenge almost immediately, a room filled with shifting floor panels, some of which radiated intense heat. Following the mysterious transmission's advice, Lewis guided his team through a specific pattern of steps, narrowly avoiding panels that suddenly dropped away into darkness. As they progressed deeper into the complex, the trials became increasingly difficult. They faced logic puzzles that tested their problem-solving skills, physical challenges that pushed their bodies to the limit, and even moral dilemmas presented by ancient AIs. Each test seemed designed not just to obstruct, but to evaluate the worthiness of those seeking control of the Genesis network. Throughout their journey, Lewis could hear the distant sounds of battle above them. The Obliterator, Progenitor, and Nexus Prime forces had engaged each other in the space around the moon, each trying to secure their own path to the surface. Lewis silently thanked Marcus for maintaining the Phoenix's defensive shield, buying them precious time. Finally, after what felt like hours of grueling challenges, they reached a massive door inscribed with symbols of the Genesis network. As Louis approached, the door slowly ground open, revealing a chamber that took their breath away. The master control hub of the Genesis network was a colossal crystalline structure, pulsing with energy that made the air itself feel alive. Holographic interfaces surrounded the crystal, displaying data in languages both familiar and utterly alien. As Lewis and his team stepped into the chamber, the hub came to life. A beam of light shot out, scanning each of them in turn before focusing on Louis. A voice, ancient yet clear, filled the chamber. You have proven yourselves worthy of accessing the Genesis network, the AI said, its tone both welcoming and cautionary. But know that with this power comes immense responsibility. The network was created not just for terraforming, but as a safeguard against cosmic threats our creators foresaw. Lewis stepped forward, his heart racing. He was moments away from accessing the full power of the Genesis network, the ability to reshape entire worlds at his fingertips. But before he could interface with the hub, alarms blared throughout the complex. Enemy forces have breached the outer defenses, Vega reported, her voice tight with tension. They're inside the facility and converging on our location. Louis looked at the master control hub, then back at the chamber entrance where the sounds of approaching combat grew louder. Time was running out. He had to make a choice, and fast. The fate of the Genesis network, and potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as Louis raised his hand towards the hub's interface, ready to claim the power that awaited him. The fate of the Genesis network, and potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as Louis raised his hand towards the hub's interface, ready to claim the power that awaited. As his fingers made contact with the smooth, cool surface of the interface, Louis felt a jolt of energy course through his body. The crystalline structure of the hub pulsed with increasing intensity, responding to his touch. A beam of light enveloped him, scanning every cell of his being. Genetic verification process initiated, the hub's AI announced, its voice echoing through the chamber. Please, stand by. Lewis held his breath, acutely aware of the precious seconds ticking away. The complex shuddered violently, dust and small debris raining down from the ceiling as the battle raged above. Vega sprinted to the chamber's entrance, her weapons at the ready. I'll hold them off as long as I can, she called over her shoulder, taking up a defensive position. Dr. Chambers hurried to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. I'm going to see if I can decipher any of this data, she said, her eyes darting across the streams of information. There might be something here that can help us. The genetic verification seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Louis could hear his heart pounding in his ears, each beat a reminder of the approaching danger. Finally, the hub's AI spoke again. Verification complete. Access granted to Louis Stark, descendant of the ancient human bloodline. The moment the words left the AI's speakers, Louis's mind was flooded with an overwhelming torrent of information. He gasped, staggering backward as the full scope of the Genesis network unfurled before his mind's eye. He saw star systems spread across the galaxy, each one housing a Genesis installation. He understood the network's true purpose, not just terraforming, but a tool for rapid colonization and a weapon against cosmic threats that made even the warring factions outside seem insignificant. As Louis grappled with this newfound knowledge, the sound of explosions grew closer. Vega's voice cut through his daze. "We've got company. Obliterators incoming." Louis blinked, forcing himself to focus on the immediate threat. He saw Vega crouched behind a piece of fallen debris, returning fire as the first wave of Obliterator forces breached the outer defenses. The Arbiter, his armor scorched and dented but still functional, led the charge. "Surrender the Genesis hub," he roared, his voice distorted by his helmet speakers. Louis's mind raced, processing the influx of information from the hub while trying to formulate a plan. He became aware of a disturbance in the air behind him, a shimmer that didn't quite match the surroundings. "Vega, behind us!" he shouted, just as a squad of progenitor soldiers materialized, their cloaking devices powering down. Major Aldrich Starborn stepped forward, his cold eyes fixed on Louis. "You've led us on quite a chase, Mr. Stark," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "But I'm afraid your journey ends here." Louis found himself caught between two hostile forces, the enormity of the Genesis network's power weighing heavily on his mind. He knew he couldn't let either faction gain control of the hub. Outside, the battle in space intensified. Through his connection to the hub, Louis could sense the destruction unfolding in orbit. He saw Commander Erebus's Nexus Prime forces clashing with both Obliterator and Progenitor fleets, turning the moon's atmosphere into a graveyard of twisted metal and superheated plasma. A new alert flashed across his consciousness, a massive ship emerging from behind the gas giant. The vessel dwarfed even the largest capital ships in the ongoing battle. "This is Admiral Thorn of the Celestial Ark," a commanding voice boomed through every communication channel. "Cease hostilities immediately or face the consequences." Louis's eyes widened as he processed the implications. The true inheritors of humanity's legacy had arrived, and they were not about to let anyone else claim the Genesis network. With enemies closing in from all sides and a new threat looming above, Louis made a desperate decision. He reached out through his connection to the hub, focusing on the complex around them. The chamber began to shift and transform. Walls flowed like liquid, forming barriers and defensive positions. The floor rippled, creating elevated platforms and cover for Louis and his team. The sudden terraforming event caught both the Obliterators and Progenitors off guard. They scrambled to regroup, momentarily thrown into disarray by the changing landscape. Louis seized the opportunity, delving deeper into the Genesis network systems. He searched frantically for a way to neutralize the threat without fully activating the network, an action he now understood could have catastrophic consequences for the fabric of space-time itself. As he sifted through the vast sea of data, Louis became aware of the Celestial Ark entering the moon's atmosphere. Its massive form cast a shadow over the battlefield, a silent but potent threat. "Final warning," Admiral Thorne's voice rang out. "Stand down, or we will be forced to deploy our primary weapon." Louis's blood ran cold as information about the Ark's main armament flowed into his mind, a device capable of unmaking matter at the subatomic level. If used, it could potentially destroy not just the complex, but the entire moon. Time seemed to slow as Louis weighed his options. The sounds of battle faded into the background as he focused on the Genesis network's intricate systems, searching for a solution that would save not only himself and his team, but potentially the entire galaxy. With the Obliterators and Progenitors regrouping for another assault, Vega's defenses on the verge of collapse, and the celestial arc poised to unleash unimaginable destruction, Louis knew the next few moments would determine the fate of humanity and the Genesis network alike. His fingers danced across the hub's interface, initiating a complex sequence of commands. Louis held his breath, hoping against hope that his bold strategy would work. The fate of everything he knew hung in the balance as the hub's systems began to respond to his input. His fingers danced across the hub's interface, initiating a complex sequence of commands. Louis held his breath, hoping against hope that his bold strategy would work. The fate of everything he knew hung in the balance as the hub's systems began to respond to his touch. Suddenly, the air around them shimmered with energy. The chamber's internal structure began to shift and flow like liquid metal. Walls rippled and reshaped themselves, forming a series of interlocking barriers and defensive positions. The rapid terraforming pulse caught both the Obliterator and Progenitor forces off guard, effectively separating them from Louis, Vega, and Dr. Chambers. "What's happening?" Vega shouted, her eyes wide as she watched the room transform around them. "I'm using the Genesis network to reshape our environment," Louis called back, his voice strained with concentration. "But it's not enough. We need more time." As if in response to his thoughts, Louis' awareness expanded further into the network's systems. He uncovered a dormant subroutine hidden deep within the hub's programming. Without hesitation, he activated it. A wave of energy pulsed outward from the hub, enveloping the entire complex in a shimmering, opalescent bubble. The sounds of battle abruptly ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. "A stasis field," Dr. Chambers breathed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "It's frozen everything in time." Louis nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained the field. "It won't last long. The power drain is immense." Outside the complex, the massive form of the celestial arc descended through the moon's atmosphere. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, effortlessly deflecting attacks from the warring fleets. On the bridge, Admiral Thorne stood tall, his cybernetic eye glowing as he surveyed the battlefield. "This is your final warning," Thorne's voice boomed across all communication channels. "Surrender now, or face annihilation." Aboard the Phoenix, Marcus's hands flew across the ship's controls. His eyes widened as he detected a fluctuation in the Ark's shield matrix. "Louis," he transmitted urgently, "the Ark's main weapon. It's drawing so much power that it's creating a weakness in their shields. If we time it right, we might have a chance to—" Marcus's transmission cut off abruptly as the stasis field expanded to encompass the entire area. Inside the hub chamber, Louis delved deeper into the Genesis network's databanks. His mind reeled as he uncovered the true scope of the ancient humans' plans, not just for terraforming, but for galactic colonization and defense against cosmic threats beyond imagination. As he processed this information, Louis stumbled upon something that made his heart race: coordinates for a hidden fleet of warships scattered across secret installations throughout the galaxy. Ships that rivaled, perhaps even surpassed, the Phoenix in power and capability. The stasis field flickered ominously. Louis could feel the hub's energy reserves depleting rapidly. They had minutes, perhaps less, before the field collapsed and the battle resumed. With no time to second-guess himself, Louis sent out a galaxy-wide activation signal to the hidden fleet. As the signal propagated across vast distances, long-dormant systems began to awaken. The stasis field failed just as the first of these ancient warships arrived. A spatial rift tore open above the moon, and from it emerged a vessel of breathtaking design. Sleek and predatory, its hull gleamed with technologies beyond anything in the current conflict. "This is Captain Darius Kane of the Excalibur," a gruff voice transmitted across all frequencies. "We stand ready to assist the rightful inheritor of humanity's legacy." The Excalibur's arrival sent shockwaves through the assembled fleets. Its weapons systems, already charged and primed, made short work of any vessel foolish enough to challenge it. Even the mighty celestial arc seemed to hesitate in the face of this new arrival. Seizing the moment, Louis established a direct neural link with the Genesis network. The influx of data threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed through, his mind operating at speeds he'd never before experienced. In that moment of clarity, he saw a path forward. Louis's consciousness reached out, touching the fabric of reality around them. Precise, localized terraforming events erupted across the battlefield. Spatial distortions blossomed around ships, disabling weapons and propulsion systems. In a matter of seconds, the entire conflict ground to a halt, save for the Phoenix and the Excalibur. As the various faction leaders found themselves suddenly impotent, Louis's voice rang out across all channels. "You've all been fighting for control of something you don't understand," he began, his tone firm but not unkind. "The Genesis Network is more than a terraforming tool. It's a safeguard for all life in our galaxy." Louis paused, allowing his words to sink in. He could sense the confusion and anger radiating from the assembled forces, but also a grudging curiosity. "I'm offering you a choice," he continued. "Join me in using this technology for the benefit of all species, or remain here, stranded, while we move forward without you." As Louis spoke, more ships from the ancient human fleet began to arrive. The Arbiter, Major Starborn, Commander Erebus, and Admiral Thorn all found themselves facing a decision that would shape the future of their respective civilizations. The chamber fell silent as the faction leaders contemplated their options. Louis stood at the center of it all, the power of the Genesis Network humming through his veins, waiting to see which path the galaxy would choose. Choose. The tension in the chamber was palpable as Louis awaited their responses. The Arbiter was the first to break the silence. His imposing form seemed to deflate slightly as he lowered his weapon. "We accept your terms," he said, his voice a mix of resignation and curiosity. "The Obliterators will stand down." This declaration sent ripples of shock through the Obliterator ranks. Most seemed relieved, but a small group bristled at the decision. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Krell, stepped forward. "You would have us bow to this human?" he snarled. "Never!" With that, Krell and his followers teleported away, no doubt to continue their crusade elsewhere. Major Aldrich Starborn of the Progenitors eyed Louis warily. "The Progenitors are willing to negotiate," he said carefully, "but we insist on maintaining our autonomy. Our research and advancements cannot be compromised." Louis nodded. "Agreed. Your expertise will be invaluable in understanding and utilizing the Genesis Network." Commander Erebus of Nexus Prime stepped forward, his eyes shining with excitement. "Nexus Prime stands ready to support this coalition," he declared. "Our mission has always been to protect and advance civilization. This alliance aligns perfectly with our goals." All eyes turned to Admiral Thorn of the Celestial Ark. The imposing figure stood rigid, his cybernetic eyes scanning the room. "You claim to be the inheritor of humanity's legacy," he said, his voice cold. "But the Celestial Ark carries the true bloodline of Earth. We are the rightful—" His words were cut short as a series of spatial rifts opened around the moon. From each rift emerged a ship of breathtaking design, their hulls gleaming with technology far beyond anything in the current conflict. The ships took up defensive positions around the complex, their presence a silent but undeniable statement of power. Louis's eyes glowed as he connected with the newly arrived fleet. "Admiral Thorn," he said calmly, "perhaps a demonstration will help you understand the scope of what we're dealing with." With a thought, Louis activated a sequence in the Genesis Network. The barren surface of a nearby moon shimmered and began to change. Mountains rose from flat plains, oceans filled deep basins, and wispy clouds formed in the rapidly developing atmosphere. In a matter of minutes, the dead rock had been transformed into a lush, habitable world. Admiral Thorn's eyes hardened, but the fight seemed to drain from his posture. "Very well," he said grudgingly. "The Celestial Ark will participate in these discussions." Louis nodded, relieved that bloodshed had been avoided. "Thank you all," he said. "Now let's move to more comfortable surroundings to begin our talks." He led the group to the newly terraformed moon, which he dubbed New Eden. As they stepped onto its surface, breathing the fresh air and feeling the warm breeze, the reality of what they were embarking on began to sink in. The leaders and their key staff gathered in a hastily constructed meeting hall. Louis stood at the head of the table, his connection to the Genesis Network humming in the back of his mind. "Before we begin," he said, his voice grave, "there's something you all need to know. The Genesis network wasn't created just for terraforming. It's a safeguard against a threat that the ancient humans foresaw, a cosmic entity known as the Void Scourge. The room fell silent as Lewis explained the nature of this galactic predator, capable of consuming entire star systems. The assembled leaders exchanged worried glances as they grasped the magnitude of the threat. This is why unity is so crucial, Louis continued. We need to pool our resources, our knowledge, and our strengths to prepare for this threat. The discussions that followed were intense but productive. Each faction brought unique perspectives and capabilities to the table. The Obliterator's mastery of energy weapons, the Progenitor's advanced bioengineering, Nexus Prime's strategic expertise, and the Celestial Arc's vast database of ancient human knowledge, all would be essential in the coming fight. As they hammered out the details of their alliance, Lewis felt a surge of hope. Perhaps they could face this threat together, and his thoughts were interrupted by an urgent transmission from Marcus on the Phoenix. "Lewis," Marcus's voice crackled through the comm system. "We're detecting a massive anomaly at the edge of the system. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Louis's blood ran cold as he tapped into the Genesis network to analyze the disturbance. A spatial rift was forming, far larger than those created by the ancient human ships. But this was different. Unstable, pulsing with temporal energy. "It's a time rift," Louis announced, his voice tight with tension. "And it's growing. If we don't stabilize it soon, it could tear this entire star system apart." The coalition leaders looked to Lewis, their earlier squabbles forgotten in the face of this new threat. He saw grit in their eyes, a shared purpose that transcended their former enmities. "We need to mount an expedition to investigate and contain this rift," Louis said. "This will be our first test as an alliance. Are you with me?" One by one, the leaders nodded their assent. As they began to assemble their team and prepare their ships, Louis received a fragmented message through the Genesis network. The words were distorted, barely comprehensible, but what he could make out chilled him to the bone. "Ish, convergence, key hidden, save or doom." Louis shook off his unease and focused on the task at hand. As the coalition's ships prepared to depart, he couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of something far greater than they could imagine. The temporal rift loomed before them, a gateway to the unknown, and possibly to humanity's past and future. With a deep breath, Louis gave the order to move out. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance, and the newly formed alliance was about to face its first. The newly formed alliance wasted no time. As their ships approached the temporal rift, the enormity of the situation became clear. The rift pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its edges fluctuating and expanding at an alarming rate. Louis stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, his mind interfaced with the Genesis network. He could feel the raw power emanating from the rift, threatening to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. "All ships maintain formation," Louis transmitted. "We need to contain this before it engulfs the nearby planets." The Arbiter's voice crackled over the comm. "Obliterator vessels, deploy energy-dampening fields. Target the outer edges of the rift." As the Obliterator ships moved into position, Louis watched in awe as shimmering fields of energy began to encapsulate the rift. The expansion slowed, but didn't stop entirely. "Major Starborn," Louis called out. "We need more data on the rift's structure." "Already on it," the Progenitor leader responded. A fleet of sleek, sensor-laden ships darted around the perimeter of the rift, gathering crucial information. Commander Erebus's calm voice came through next. "Nexus Prime operatives are modifying our shield frequencies. We should be able to withstand the temporal energies now." Even Admiral Thorne, despite his earlier reluctance, contributed to the effort. The Celestial Arc's databases are analyzing the rift's composition. We may be able to... Thorne's transmission cut off abruptly as a massive surge of energy erupted from the center of the rift. The coalition ships rocked from the shockwave, their modified shields flickering under the strain. "Status report," Louis demanded, his hands flying over the Phoenix's control panels. "Sir," one of his crew members called out, "there's something coming through the rift." All eyes turned to the swirling vortex of temporal energy. A massive object was emerging, dwarfing even the largest ships in their fleet. As it fully materialized, Lewis's breath caught in his throat. It was a ship, a dreadnought of clearly human design, but far beyond anything he had ever seen. Its hull bore the scars of intense battle, and it drifted lifelessly in space. "By the stars," Major Starborn whispered over the comm. That's ancient human technology, far more advanced than anything we've encountered." Louis's mind raced with possibilities. This ship could hold the key to understanding the Void Scourge, perhaps even to defeating it. But first, they needed to investigate. "I'm assembling a boarding party," Louis announced. "We need representatives from each faction. This is too important for any of us to handle alone." Within minutes, Louis found himself aboard a shuttle with Vega, Dr. Chambers, and a carefully selected team from each coalition member. As they approached the massive dreadnought, Louis couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The shuttle docked with a barely audible hiss. As the airlock cycled, Louis addressed the team. "We don't know what we'll find in there. Stay alert, and remember, we're in this together now." The moment they stepped aboard the ancient vessel, klaxons blared to life. Automated defense systems, dormant for millennia, sprang into action. Laser turrets swiveled towards them, and security doors slammed shut. "Take cover," the Arbiter roared, his massive form shielding several team members as energy bolts sizzled past. Major Starborn's fingers danced over a holographic interface. "These systems, they're similar to some progenitor designs. I might be able to—" A series of sharp cracks echoed through the corridor as the Arbiter methodically disabled the laser turrets with precise shots from his weapon. "Or we could do that," Starborn muttered, a hint of admiration in his voice. As they pushed deeper into the ship, signs of an ancient battle became apparent. Scorch marks marred the walls, and they passed the desiccated remains of human crew members. "What happened here?" Vega wondered aloud, her voice hushed. Dr. Chambers knelt to examine one of the bodies. "These wounds, they're not from any weapon I recognize. Whatever attacked this ship, it wasn't anything we've encountered before." The team finally reached the central command center. As Louis interfaced with the ship's systems, information flooded his mind through the Genesis network. "This ship," he said, his voice filled with awe, "it's called the Kronos. It was part of a last-ditch effort against the Void Scourge. They sent it back in time to warn the past, but something went wrong during the jump." As Louis and Dr. Chambers worked to decrypt more data, the others secured the primary systems. Vega managed to restore minimal power, stabilizing the Kronos' position relative to the rift. Their exploration led them to a sealed chamber deep within the ship. Inside, they found a device unlike anything they had seen before, a complex mechanism that seemed to hum with potential energy. "This must be the key mentioned in that message," Louis realized. He reached out to interface with it through the Genesis network. The moment he connected, the device pulsed with energy. The temporal rift outside visibly stabilized, its wild fluctuations calming for a moment. But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the Kronos. A computerized voice echoed through the corridors. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. All personnel evacuate immediately." Louis's heart raced. "We need to go, now!" Grabbing the key device, the team sprinted back towards their shuttle. The Kronos shuddered around them, systems overloading and exploding in cascading failure. They barely made it back to their ships before the ancient dreadnought began to break apart. As the Kronos disintegrated, its destruction triggered a chain reaction within the temporal rift. The rift collapsed inward, creating a gravitational vortex of immense power. Coalition ships struggled against its pull, their engines straining to capacity. Louis, aboard the Phoenix once more, channeled the power of the Genesis network. He created a series of spatial anchors, invisible tethers that held their fleet in place against the rift's intensifying pull. "We can't just escape," Louis transmitted to the coalition leaders. "We need to close this rift completely." Using the data from the Kronos and the key device, Louis outlined a daring plan. They would use the Genesis network to create an energy barrier around the rift, while using the key to collapse it from within. As they prepared to implement this strategy, long-range sensors lit up with multiple warnings. Unidentified objects were approaching at impossible speeds, heading straight for the rift. Louis's voice was grim as he addressed the coalition. We're out of time. Whatever's coming, we need to close this rift before they get here. Are you with me?" The responses came swiftly, each leader affirming their commitment. As one unified force, they began to enact Louis' plan, racing against time and the approach of unknown entities that could change the course of galactic history. As the coalition ships prepared to enact Louis' plan, the unidentified objects on their long-range sensors rapidly closed in. "We have visual contact," reported the Phoenix's sensor officer. "Sir, you need to see this." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a chilling sight. A fleet of sleek biomechanical ships approached at impossible speeds, their hulls pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Louis felt a cold dread settle in his stomach as he realized what they were facing. "Void Scourge Scouts," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. Shaking off his momentary shock, Louis' voice rang out clear and strong. "All ships form a defensive perimeter around the rift. We cannot let them through." The coalition fleet moved with practiced precision, each faction taking up strategic positions. Louis interfaced with the Genesis network, channeling its power to create a series of spatial barriers. The shimmering fields of energy blossomed between the coalition ships, forming a multi-layered defense against the approaching threat. "Admiral Thorne," Louis called out, "position the Celestial Ark as our cornerstone. We'll need its firepower." The massive ship lumbered into position, its weapons systems humming to life. Louis could almost feel the raw power emanating from the ancient vessel. On the Phoenix, Dr. Chambers worked feverishly with a team of progenitor scientists, calibrating the key device they had recovered from the Chronos. "Louis," she reported, her voice tense with concentration, "we're ready to begin the sealing process." "Do it," Louis commanded. He watched as pulses of energy began to emanate from the key device, slowly collapsing the rift's internal structure. Simultaneously, Louis used the Genesis network to generate an ever-tightening energy barrier around the rift's exterior. The first wave of Void Scourge scouts reached the Coalition's defensive line. To Louis's horror, the alien vessels phased through the initial spatial barriers as if they weren't there. "Impossible," he muttered, his hands flying over the control panels. He quickly adapted the Genesis-powered defenses, creating more complex, multi-layered barriers. This time, the scouts' progress slowed, but it wasn't enough to stop them completely. The battle erupted in earnest. The Arbiter's voice boomed over the comms as his obliterator forces unleashed devastating barrages. Their energy weapons tore into the biomechanical hulls of the Void Scourge scouts, proving surprisingly effective. Commander Erebus coordinated Nexus Prime strike teams with cold efficiency. "Target their propulsion systems," he ordered. "Cripple their maneuverability." Major Starborn's progenitor vessels darted between the larger ships, their advanced shielding technology protecting the more vulnerable Coalition ships from the Void Scourge's strange weaponry. Despite their best efforts, several scouts broke through the defensive line, making a beeline for the temporal rift. Louis knew he couldn't let them reach it. He took direct control of the Phoenix, his mind melding with the ship's systems through the Genesis network. "Vega, with me," he called out. "We're going in." The Phoenix surged forward, its hull shifting and adapting in real time as Louis pushed its newly awakened Genesis capabilities to their limits. They weaved through the chaotic battlefield, closing in on the lead scout. "What's the plan?" Vega asked, her hands steady on the weapons controls. "Something crazy," Louis replied. He focused his will through the Genesis network, channeling its terraforming capabilities into a localized pulse. The energy burst forth from the Phoenix, washing over the nearest scout. Its biomechanical structure began to warp and degrade under the assault. "It's working," Vega exclaimed, targeting the weakened sections of the scout's hull with precision fire. They repeated this tactic, disabling several scouts in quick succession, but for every ship they took down, more seemed to take its place. "Louis," Dr. Chambers' voice cut through the din of battle. "The key device is fully integrated with the Genesis network. It's resonating with the rift's temporal energies." "What does that mean for us?" Louis asked, narrowly avoiding a blast from a Void Scourge weapon. "It's accelerating the sealing process, but it's causing dangerous fluctuations in the surrounding space-time fabric. We need to end this quickly." Louis's mind raced, analyzing the battlefield. An idea formed, dangerous but potentially decisive. All coalition ships fall back to secondary positions, he ordered. Create a gap in our formation. The coalition fleet responded immediately, their disciplined maneuvers opening a clear path to the rift. As Louis had hoped, the remaining Void Scourge scouts rushed toward this apparent weakness. Now, Dr. Chambers, Louis shouted, activate the key device at full power. A massive pulse of chronometric energy burst forth from the Phoenix, amplified by the Genesis network. It caught the Void Scourge scouts in its wake, their biomechanical structures rapidly aging and deteriorating. The alien vessels began to break apart, unable to withstand the temporal strain. The energy pulse continued outward, enveloping the temporal rift. Louis watched in awe as the rift's structure buckled under the combined assault of the key device and the Genesis-powered containment field. With a final, spectacular burst of light and energy, the rift collapsed in on itself, sealing shut. As the blinding light faded, Louis surveyed the battlefield. The remaining Void Scourge scouts, cut off from their reinforcements, attempted to flee. Don't let them escape, he ordered. We can't risk them reporting back to the main force. The coalition fleet rallied quickly, moving to intercept the fleeing scouts. A series of short, intense skirmishes erupted as they methodically neutralized the alien threat. Louis piloted the Phoenix through the chaos, providing support where needed. As the last Void Scourge scout fell silent, an eerie calm settled over the battlefield. Louis let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They had won this battle, but he knew it was only the beginning. All faction leaders, he transmitted, report to the Phoenix immediately. We need to discuss our next steps. As the coalition leaders gathered, Louis couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and apprehension. They had proven they could work together against a common enemy, but the true test was yet to come. The Void Scourge would return, and they needed to be ready. The meeting was just beginning when a sensor officer interrupted. Sir, we're detecting residual temporal energy concentrations scattered throughout the star system. They appear to be after effects of the rift's collapse. Louis exchanged glances with the assembled leaders. These anomalies could be dangerous, but they also represented an opportunity. Understanding and controlling these temporal remnants might be crucial in their ongoing fight against the Void Scourge. It seems our work is far from finished, Louis said, turning to face the view screen. The star field before them shimmered with the promise of both peril and possibility. Shall we investigate? Shall we investigate these temporal anomalies? Louis asked, addressing the assembled coalition leaders. Agreement rippled through the room. The leaders recognized the potential value and danger these anomalies represented in their fight against the Void Scourge. I propose we start with the nearest one, Louis continued, bringing up a holographic display of the star system. A pulsing red dot indicated the location of a particularly large anomaly. Our long-range scans show it centered on an asteroid not far from our current position. Within hours, a task force assembled. Ships from each faction formed up around the Phoenix, their diverse designs a testament to the unprecedented cooperation between the former rivals. As they approached the asteroid, Louis felt a mix of anticipation and caution. The asteroid came into view on the main screen, surrounded by a shimmering energy field that distorted the space around it. Louis leaned forward, studying the phenomenon intently. Dr. Chambers, what are we looking at? He asked. The scientist's fingers flew over her console as she analyzed the incoming data. The asteroid's interior has been severely warped by temporal energies. We're detecting pockets of accelerated and decelerated time throughout its structure. Louis nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. Deploy the temporal probes. Let's get a better look inside. The specialized probes, products of Dr. Chambers' work with the key device, streaked toward the asteroid. They penetrated the energy field with ease, transmitting data back to the fleet as they mapped the asteroid's temporal landscape. As the information flowed in, a complex network of time-shifted chambers and corridors took shape on the holographic display. Louis studied the image, recognizing both the potential and the risk it presented. We need to go in, he announced, turning to face the others. I'll lead a ground team to explore the anomaly directly. The next hour was a flurry of activity as Lewis assembled his team. Vega and Dr. Chambers were obvious choices, their skills and experience invaluable. The Arbiter, with his combat prowess, would be essential if they encountered any threats. Representatives from each faction rounded out the group, their diverse expertise a reflection of the coalition's strength. As they donned their chronosuits, sleek, form-fitting garments designed to protect against temporal fluctuations, Louis briefed the team on what to expect. "Remember, time isn't consistent in there," he cautioned. "Stay alert, stay together, and don't touch anything unless absolutely necessary." They boarded the shuttle, its hull reinforced with temporal shielding. As they approached the asteroid, the ship began to shake violently, buffeted by conflicting time streams. Lewis closed his eyes, reaching out through the Genesis network. He visualized the chaotic temporal energies surrounding them, then imagined them parting like a curtain. A stable corridor formed in the energy field, allowing the shuttle to pass through safely. The shuttle touched down on the asteroid's cratered surface with a gentle thud. As the team disembarked, Lewis felt a subtle vibration through his boots, the only outward sign of the temporal chaos raging within the rock beneath their feet. They found a breach in the asteroid's outer shell, likely caused by the initial temporal event that created the anomaly. Single file, they entered the dark opening, activating the lights on their suits. Inside, they found themselves in a twisting labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. Each section seemed to exist in its own time stream. In one corridor, mineral formations grew and eroded in a matter of seconds. In another, dust particles hung motionless in the air, frozen in time. Louis consulted the handheld device that guided them through this temporal maze. "This way," he said, pointing down a tunnel to their left. "There's a large chamber ahead that seems relatively stable." As they entered the chamber, lights flickered to life automatically. The team found themselves standing in what appeared to be an ancient human research outpost. Workstations lined the walls, their screens dark but intact. Strange devices and artifacts were scattered throughout the room, their purpose unknown. Dr. Chambers approached one of the workstations, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is incredible," she breathed, running her gloved hand over the console. "The level of temporal manipulation technology here, it's far beyond anything we've seen before." Louis nodded, equally impressed. "See what you can learn from these systems. The rest of us will secure the perimeter and look for anything else of value." As the team spread out to explore, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He reached out through the Genesis network, scanning for any active systems or hidden defenses. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Louis spun around just in time to see a section of the wall slide open, revealing a hidden compartment. A sleek metallic drone emerged, its single eye glowing an angry red. "Watch out!" Louis shouted, diving for cover as the drone unleashed a barrage of energy bolts. The Arbiter reacted with lightning speed, his weapon already in hand. He fired a precise shot that caught the drone in its optic sensor, sending it spiraling to the ground. But more drones were emerging from hidden compartments throughout the chamber. They moved with incredible speed, trapped in accelerated time streams that made them appear as little more than blurs. "Form a defensive circle," the Arbiter commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Back-to-back, overlapping fields of fire." The team complied, falling into formation with practiced ease. Louis reached out through the Genesis network, creating localized temporal fields to slow the drone's movements. It wasn't much, but it gave his teammates the edge they needed to target and destroy the automated defenses. As the last drone fell, sparking and twitching on the ground, Louis allowed himself a moment to catch his breath. "Everyone okay?" he asked, looking around at his team. They nodded, a bit shaken but unharmed. Dr. Chambers was already back at the workstation, her fingers flying over the controls. "Louis," she called out, excitement evident in her voice. "I think I've found something. There's a massive power source at the center of this asteroid. It looks like some kind of temporal engine." Louis's eyes widened. A temporal engine could be exactly what they needed to turn the tide against the Void Scourge. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a priority alert flashed across his suit's heads-up display. Long-range sensors had detected a small group of Void Scourge ships entering the system. These weren't scouts, they were full-fledged warships, more advanced than anything they'd encountered before, and they were heading straight for the Coalition fleet. Louis's mind raced, weighing their options. They needed more time to study the temporal engine, but they couldn't risk being caught unprepared by the approaching Void Scourge forces. He made his decision quickly. Dr. Chambers, begin the process of extracting that temporal engine. Arbiter, I need your help fortifying our position here. Everyone else, prepare for potential hostiles. We're not leaving without that engine. As the team sprang into action, Louis reached out through the Genesis network, feeling the complex temporal currents flowing through the asteroid. He began to manipulate them, creating a series of temporal traps and barriers throughout the structure. The Arbiter worked alongside him, his tactical genius complementing Louis's abilities. Together, they turned the asteroid's temporal chaos into a defensive weapon, ready to confuse and disorient any Void Scourge forces that might try to follow them. Outside, Louis could sense the Coalition fleet moving into defensive positions. Commander Erebus's voice came through the comm system, cool and controlled as ever. We've established a perimeter around the asteroid. The Celestial Ark is in position to provide heavy fire support if needed. Louis acknowledged the report, then turned his attention back to the temporal engine. Dr. Chambers and her team were working feverishly to disconnect it from the asteroid's systems. How much longer? Louis asked, feeling the pressure of time, both literal and figurative, bearing down on them. Almost there, Dr. Chambers replied, her voice strained with concentration. This technology is incredibly complex. One wrong move, and we could trigger a localized temporal collapse. Louis nodded, trusting in her expertise. He turned his attention outward, monitoring the approaching Void Scourge ships through the Coalition fleet's sensors. The first shots were fired in space, energy weapons lighting up the void between the opposing forces. Louis watched the battle unfold with growing concern. The Coalition ships were holding their own, but the Void Scourge's technology had clearly advanced since their last encounter. "We're ready," Dr. Chambers called out, snapping Louis's attention back to their immediate situation. The temporal engine is disconnected, but moving it is going to be a challenge. Louis surveyed the massive device, its intricate components pulsing with scarcely controlled energy. It was far too large to fit through the narrow corridors they had navigated to reach this chamber. An idea formed in Louis's mind, risky but potentially their only option. "We'll use the Genesis network in conjunction with the key device," he explained quickly. "We'll create a stable temporal bubble around the engine and move the whole thing as one unit." As the team prepared for this daring maneuver, alarms blared through their comm systems. Void Scourge forces had breached the asteroid's outer defenses and were making their way inside. Louis took a deep breath, centering himself. Everything hinged on the next few moments. With the temporal engine secured in its protective bubble, they began their perilous journey back to the surface. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of battle as the Void Scourge clashed with the asteroid's automated defenses. Above, the space battle raged on, the fate of the Coalition fleet hanging in the balance. Louis led his team through the twisting, time-warped tunnels, the massive temporal engine floating beside them in its shimmering bubble. Every step brought them closer to their goal, but also closer to the encroaching Void Scourge forces. As they rounded a corner, Louis caught a glimpse of movement ahead, sleek biomechanical forms advancing through a corridor of accelerated time. The Void Scourge had found them. Louis's mind raced, searching for a way out of this temporal maze and back to their shuttle. The engine they carried could be the key to turning the tide against the Void Scourge, but first they had to escape this asteroid alive. Louis's mind raced, searching for a way out of this temporal maze and back to their shuttle. The engine they carried could be the key to turning the tide against the Void Scourge, but first they had to escape this asteroid. He reached out through the Genesis network, creating a series of temporal barriers to slow the Void Scourge's advance. The alien forms twisted and contorted as they passed through the distorted time fields, giving Louis and his team precious seconds to maneuver. "This way," Louis called, gesturing toward a narrow corridor that pulsed with shifting temporal energies. The team moved swiftly, the massive temporal engine floating beside them in its shimmering bubble. As they rounded a corner, they entered a vast chamber near the asteroid's surface. Lewis's heart sank as he saw a group of Void Scourge soldiers blocking their path to the shuttle. The biomechanical creatures moved with unnatural grace, their weapons trained on the team. The Arbiter sprang into action, his voice crisp and authoritative. "Defensive positions. Vega, with me. We'll create a perimeter around the engine." Vega nodded, her chrono suit humming as she activated its advanced capabilities. The two warriors engaged the Void Scourge in close combat, their movements blurring as they exploited the temporal fluctuations to gain the upper hand. Lewis watched in awe as the Arbiter seemed to phase in and out of time, appearing behind a Void Scourge soldier and neutralizing it before it could react. Vega moved with liquid grace, her attacks leaving after-images in the air as she struck from multiple angles simultaneously. While the battle raged, Dr. Chambers worked frantically at the temporal engine's control panel. Her face was etched with concern as she called out, "Lewis, we have a problem. The engine's power core is destabilizing. These temporal distortions are causing it to fluctuate wildly." Lewis rushed to her side, his eyes widening as he saw the readings on her display. "If it goes critical, it could erase a significant portion of this star system from existence," Dr. Chambers finished grimly. Louis's mind raced through possible solutions, each one discarded as quickly as it formed. Finally, he made a decision that sent a chill down his spine. "I'm going to interface directly with the engine," he announced. "I'll use the Genesis connection in the key device to create a localized temporal bubble. It should stabilize the core long enough for transport." Dr. Chambers gasped. "Lewis, the strain on your mind—" "We don't have a choice." Louis cut her off, already reaching for the key device. As Lewis connected to the temporal engine, he felt an immediate surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. His consciousness expanded, encompassing the swirling vortex of temporal energies within the engine's core. He gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain control as the conflicting time streams threatened to tear his mind apart. With supreme effort, Lewis shaped the chaotic energies into a stable bubble around the engine. The strain was immense, sweat beading on his forehead as he struggled to maintain the delicate balance. "Move! Now!" he managed to gasp out. The Arbiter and Vega redoubled their efforts, clearing a path through the Void Scourge forces. The team pushed forward, Louis stumbling along with them, his mind still locked in communion with the temporal engine. They emerged onto the asteroid's surface, only to find themselves in the midst of a raging battle. Void Scourge dropships descended from above, disgorging more troops. Coalition forces, led by Major Starborn, fought desperately to keep them at bay. Their shuttle lay nearby, its hull scarred and smoking from the ongoing firefight. Dr. Chambers rushed to assess the damage, her face falling as she examined the craft. "The main engines are down," she reported. "We might be able to manage a short flight to a safer extraction point, but achieving orbit is out of the question." The Arbiter wasted no time, leaping into the shuttle's weapons bay. "I'll provide covering fire. Get that engine aboard." As Vega and Major Starborn's troops worked to load the temporal engine, Lewis felt his strength waning. The effort of maintaining the temporal bubble was taking its toll, his vision blurring at the edges. A deafening roar filled the air as a massive Void Scourge warship descended from the space battle above. It dwarfed the Coalition ships, its hull filled with weapons beyond their comprehension. As the team watched in horror, the warship began charging a weapon of terrifying power, its target clear, the shuttle and the temporal engine. Suddenly, the celestial arc moved into position, its massive bulk interposing itself between the Void Scourge warship and the asteroid. The alien weapon discharged, its energy splashing against the Ark's shields in a dazzling display of light and power. The Ark's shields held, but at a terrible cost. Alarms blared across the comm channels as the great ship's systems began to fail. It listed to one side, slowly losing altitude as it plummeted toward the asteroid's surface. "Now's our chance," Vega shouted, slamming the shuttle's hatch closed. "We need to move." The shuttle's engines sputtered to life, lifting the craft off the asteroid's surface just as debris from the space battle began raining down around them. Luis, his mind still locked in concentration, felt the shift in gravity as they ascended. As they broke through the asteroid's thin atmosphere, A squad of sleek fighters fell into formation around them. The pilots' voices crackled over the comm, identifying themselves as Nexus Prime's elite. "We'll escort you to the fleet," the lead pilot announced. "But we've got company incoming. Multiple Void Scourge ships on an intercept course." Lewis, through the haze of his mental exertion, sensed the approaching danger. The shuttle weaved through the debris field of the ongoing battle, its escort fighters engaged in a deadly dance with the pursuing Void Scourge ships. As they neared the Coalition fleet, Lewis felt his control over the temporal bubble beginning to slip. The engine's core pulsed erratically, sending out waves of distortion that warped the space around the shuttle. "We're losing containment," Dr. Chambers cried out, her fingers flying over the engine's controls. "Lewis, can you hold it together for just a bit longer?" Lewis didn't respond. Every ounce of his concentration focused on maintaining the delicate balance of temporal energies. He could feel his consciousness fraying at the edges, threatening to unravel completely. The Phoenix loomed ahead, its cargo bay doors yawning open to receive them. As the shuttle touched down, Louis felt a surge of relief wash over him. But the battle was not nearly finished. Over. But the battle was not nearly finished. As the shuttle settled onto the Phoenix's deck, Lewis felt his grasp on the temporal bubble slipping away. The engine's core pulsed erratically, sending waves of distortion through the hangar bay. "We need to stabilize it now," Dr. Chambers shouted, her fingers flying over a control panel. Louis struggled to maintain focus, but the strain of the prolonged connection was taking its toll. His vision blurred, and he felt himself falling forward. "Lewis!" Vega caught him before he hit the ground. The last thing Lewis saw before losing consciousness was a team of technicians rushing towards the temporal engine, portable containment fields at the ready. He awoke to the sterile white of a medical bay ceiling. Blinking away the disorientation, Louis tried to sit up but found his body uncooperative. "Easy there," Dr. Chambers said, gently pushing him back down. "You've been out for nearly 2 days." Louis's mind raced, trying to piece together what had happened. "The engine? The Void Scourge?" "The engine is secure," Dr. Chambers assured him. "As for the Void Scourge, well, we've bought ourselves some time." She explained that the Coalition fleet had established a temporary base on a habitable moon, orbiting a nearby gas giant. The Phoenix had landed, and Lewis had been immediately transferred to this makeshift medical facility. "We've been monitoring your vital signs and brain activity," Dr. Chambers continued, gesturing to a series of displays. "Your prolonged connection to the temporal engine has had some interesting effects." Lewis closed his eyes, suddenly aware of a new sensation. It was as if he could feel the ebb and flow of time around him, like currents in a vast ocean. "I can sense it," he murmured. "Time itself." Dr. Chambers nodded, her expression a mix of fascination and concern. "We've detected significant changes in your neural patterns. It seems your experience has enhanced your ability to perceive and manipulate temporal energies." Before Louis could respond, the door slid open, revealing the Arbiter. The warrior's typically stoic demeanor was tinged with urgency. "Doctor, if he's able, we need Lewis in the command center," the Arbiter said. "We've detected Void Scourge scouts entering the system." Louis pushed himself up, ignoring Dr. Chambers' protests. "I'm ready." The command center was a hive of activity. Holographic displays showed the star system, with a cluster of red dots indicating the approaching Void Scourge ships. Commander Erebus stood at the center, his expression grim. "They're conducting a search pattern. It appears they're tracking the residual energy signature of the temporal engine." Lewis studied the display, his enhanced perception allowing him to see subtle temporal distortions around the Void Scourge ships. An idea began to form. "We can use the engine to create false temporal signatures," he said, drawing surprised looks from those around him. "Confuse their tracking methods." The Arbiter nodded approvingly. "A sound strategy. It will buy us time to prepare our defenses." As the Coalition leaders discussed the plan, Louis made his way to the secure facility housing the temporal engine. A team of scientists and engineers from various factions were already hard at work, studying the device in a specially constructed containment chamber. Louis approached the chamber, feeling the familiar pull of the engine's temporal energies. With his newfound abilities, he could see the swirling vortexes of time contained within its core. We need to reconfigure the engine to generate multiple decoy signatures, Lewis explained to the research team. I can guide you through the process. As they worked, Louis became aware of a commotion outside the facility. Through the windows, he could see a prototype fighter being rolled out onto the moon's surface. Its sleek design incorporated elements of temporal shielding, a result of Major Starborn's efforts to upgrade their technology. The Arbiter approached, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. I'll be piloting that craft, he announced. We need to test its capabilities against the Void Scourge scouts. Louis nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Be careful out there, he said. We're dealing with forces we barely understand. As the Arbiter left to prepare for his mission, Louis turned his attention back to the temporal engine. With careful manipulation, he began to generate the false temporal signatures that would be their best hope for evading detection. Outside, the Coalition fleet began to deploy, taking up strategic positions throughout the system. The Phoenix, now equipped with enhanced temporal shielding, moved into place near the gas giant, ready to coordinate the operation. Louis stood at the engine's control center, his hands hovering over the intricate interface. He could feel the pulse of time flowing through his fingers, ready to be shaped and directed. Initiating decoy sequence, he announced, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. As pulses of temporal energy spread across the star system, Lewis watched the sensor displays, waiting for any sign of the Void Scourge's response. The fate of their hidden base, the temporal engine, and potentially the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The Coalition forces held their positions, weapons primed and sensors sweeping space. In the tense silence that followed, Louis could almost hear the ticking of a cosmic clock, counting down to their next confrontation with the Void Scourge. Scourge! The tension in the command center was palpable as all eyes focused on the sensor displays. Suddenly, the screens lit up with multiple contacts. The Void Scourge scouting party had entered the system, their ships appearing as ominous red blips scattered across the holographic star map. Lewis watched intently, his enhanced temporal perception allowing him to see subtle distortions around the alien vessels. He held his breath as the scouts encountered the first of the false temporal signatures. It's working, he murmured, a hint of relief in his voice. They're splitting up to investigate the decoys. Commander Erebus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the tactical display. Excellent. Arbiter, you're clear to launch. Show us what that prototype can do. On the moon's surface, the sleek temporal fighter roared to life. The Arbiter's voice crackled over the comm as he guided the craft out of the atmosphere, engaging cloaking systems, moving to intercept the nearest scout. Louis turned his attention back to the temporal engine controls, fine-tuning the decoy signals to maintain the illusion. Through the command center's panoramic windows, he caught a glimpse of the Arbiter's fighter streaking across the star-studded sky, a barely visible distortion against the backdrop of space. The Coalition watched in tense silence as the Arbiter closed in on the nearest Void Scourge scout. The alien vessel fired a barrage of energy weapons, but the temporal shielding held firm. The prototype fighter danced through the assault with impossible agility, evading beams that seemed to bend and warp around it. Temporal shielding is exceeding expectations, the Arbiter reported, his voice calm despite the intense maneuvers. Their weapons are having minimal effect. Commander Erebus allowed himself a small smile. All ships, prepare to engage. Use the new temporal weapons, but remember, we need to test their effectiveness. Don't take unnecessary risks. A flurry of activity erupted as Coalition vessels moved into position. The battle that followed was unlike anything Louis had ever seen. Coalition ships phased in and out of normal spacetime, their temporal weapons creating localized distortions that disrupted Void Scourge systems. As Lewis monitored the engine's output, he noticed a concerning development on the tactical display. One of the Void Scourge scouts had broken away from the main group, heading dangerously close to their hidden base on the moon. Without hesitation, Louis reached out with his mind, connecting directly with the temporal engine. He felt the familiar rush of power, but this time, he shaped it with precision born of his newfound abilities. A shimmering bubble of distorted spacetime enveloped the approaching Void Scourge ship. Inside the bubble, time slowed to a crawl. The alien vessel's movements became sluggish, its weapons firing at a fraction of their normal speed. Major Starborn, Lewis called out, his voice strained with effort. There's a scout ship caught in a time dilation field near your position. You should be able to disable it easily. Major Starborn's response was immediate. Copy that. Strike team, form up on me. We're taking that ship intact. Louis watched through the command center's windows as a squad of coalition fighters swooped down on the time-locked Void Scourge vessel. With its defenses crippled by the temporal effect, the alien ship was quickly overwhelmed and captured. As the last of the Void Scourge scouts were driven off or destroyed, a cheer went up in the command center. They had won their first true victory against the alien threat. But for Louis, the world was starting to spin. The strain of maintaining the time dilation field had taken its toll. He stumbled, his connection to the temporal engine slipping. "Lewis!" Dr. Chambers cried out, rushing to his side as he collapsed. The last thing Lewis heard before losing consciousness was the doctor's urgent voice. "We need to get him to medical now. His cellular structure is destabilizing." Louis drifted in and out of awareness, catching fragments of conversation around him. Dr. Chambers' worried tones, discussing cellular degradation and temporal exposure. The Arbiter's deep voice recounting the success of the prototype fighter. Commander Erebus outlining plans for fleet-wide upgrades. When he finally regained full consciousness, Louis found himself back in the medical bay. Dr. Chambers stood over him, her face a mix of relief and concern. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." Louis tried to sit up, but his body felt weak, uncooperative. "How long was I out?" "Nearly 48 hours, Dr. Chambers replied. "Your prolonged exposure to the temporal engine is causing some complications. We're working on stabilizing your condition, but we need to better understand the engine's effects on organic matter." Before Louis could respond, the door slid open, revealing Commander Erebus and the Arbiter. Their expressions were grim, hinting at new developments. "I apologize for the intrusion," Commander Erebus said, "but we've made a critical discovery. The captured Void Scourge ship has revealed their plans. They're constructing a massive portal in a nearby system, one that could bring through an entire invasion fleet." The Arbiter stepped forward, his eyes meeting Louis'. "We need your expertise more than ever. The Coalition is planning to outfit our entire fleet with temporal technology, but we lack the power to do so. You mentioned other temporal engines hidden throughout the galaxy. If we could locate even one more." Louis nodded, his mind already racing despite his physical weakness. "I remember. The ancient human database. It had references to other engines. If we could find them, we could double our production capabilities." Commander Erebus activated a holographic display showing a map of nearby star systems. "We're preparing long-range scouting missions to search for these engines. In the meantime, Major Starborn is working on reverse engineering the Void Scourge technology. We're making progress, but time is not on our side." As the Coalition leaders discussed their next moves, Louis could feel the weight of their situation settling over him. They had won a significant victory, but the true test was yet to come. His gaze drifted to the window, where he could see Coalition ships preparing for their scouting missions. In the depths of space, the Void Scourge portal loomed, a ticking clock counting down to a potential invasion. The race to find more temporal engines, upgrade their fleet, and unravel the secrets of alien technology had begun. And through it all, Louis knew he would have to find a way to stabilize his own condition if he hoped to see this fight through to the end. As Dr. Chambers began another round of tests, Louis closed his eyes, focusing on the ebb and flow of temporal energy he could still sense around him. Somewhere out there, the key to their survival waited to be found. They just had to reach it in time. They just had to reach it in time. As Louis focused on his recovery, the Coalition's efforts to prepare for the Void Scourge invasion intensified. Days turned into weeks, and the urgency of their situation grew with each passing moment. The long-range scouting missions initiated by Commander Erebus began to yield results, bringing a glimmer of hope to their dire circumstances. One morning, as Louis was undergoing another round of tests in the medical bay, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Chambers rushed to the nearest communication panel, her face tightening as she listened to the incoming message. "Louis," she said, turning to him with a mix of excitement and concern, "one of our search teams has found something. a temporal anomaly in a nearby star system. Initial scans suggest it could be another ancient human temporal engine. Louis's eyes widened, a surge of energy coursing through his weakened body. He pushed himself up from the medical bed, wincing at the effort. "We need to go. Now!" Dr. Chambers shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. Your condition is still critical. The cellular degradation—" "Is precisely why I need to be there," Louis interrupted. He met her gaze, his dedication evident. "My connection to the temporal technology makes me essential to this operation. You know that as well as I do." The doctor's shoulders sagged, recognizing the truth in his words. "Fine," she conceded, "but only if we take extreme precautions. I'm having a specialized medical pod prepared for you. It will allow you to interface with the temporal systems while receiving constant care." Within hours, a task force was assembled. The Phoenix, now gleaming with its upgraded temporal shielding, led the small fleet. Louis watched from his medical pod as they prepared for departure, the familiar hum of the engines vibrating through the ship's hull. Commander Erebus's voice came through the ship's communication system. "All vessels, prepare for hyperspace jump. Arbiter, maintain formation with your prototype fighter. We don't know what we'll encounter out there." As the task force leapt into hyperspace, Louis closed his eyes, reaching out with his enhanced temporal perception. He could feel the ebb and flow of time around them, distorted by their faster-than-light travel. When they emerged from hyperspace hours later, a gasp went up from the bridge crew. Before them lay a massive debris field, a graveyard of ancient starships stretching as far as the eye could see. Twisted metal and shattered hulls created a treacherous maze, blocking their path to the planet beyond. "Impossible to navigate conventionally," Erebus muttered, his brow furrowed. Louis's voice, weak but steady, came through the ship's speakers. "I can guide us through. My perception, I can see the patterns, the gaps between collisions." For the next hour, Louis directed the Phoenix through the debris field, his instructions allowing the ship to predict and avoid collisions with uncanny precision. The task force followed in their wake, carefully maneuvering through the hazardous region. As they emerged from the debris field, the source of the temporal anomaly came into view, a small, barren planet with a heavily cratered surface. Scans revealed a vast underground complex, likely of ancient human origin. The task force landed near the entrance to the facility, and a team led by the Arbiter and Erebus began to explore the interior. Louis monitored their progress from his medical pod, providing guidance through the ship's communication systems. "Be careful," he warned, as the team encountered the first of many automated defense systems. "These are more advanced than what we've seen before." The team's progress slowed as they carefully navigated and disabled the defenses. Meanwhile, aboard the Phoenix, Louis's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. Pain racked his body as the cellular degradation accelerated. "Hold on, Louis," Dr. Chambers urged, working frantically to stabilize him. She adjusted the settings on the medical pod, using a combination of advanced techniques and carefully controlled temporal fields generated by the ship's systems. As Louis fought against the pain, his consciousness expanded. Suddenly, he found himself perceiving multiple timelines, catching glimpses of possible futures. In one terrifying vision, he saw the Void Scourge Armada gathering near their portal device, readying for invasion far sooner than they had anticipated. With a monumental effort, Louis forced himself back to the present moment. "Erebus," he gasped into the communicator. "We have less time than we thought. The Void Scourge, they're almost ready." Before Erebus could respond, the sound of weapons fire erupted through the communication channel. The ground team had reached the central chamber, housing the second temporal engine, only to be ambushed by unknown assailants wielding advanced weaponry. "Taking heavy fire," the Arbiter's voice rang out, punctuated by the sound of his own weapon discharging. "Unknown, hostiles, highly organized." As the firefight raged in the underground complex, Louis made a desperate decision. Despite Dr. Chambers' protests, he established a direct neural link with the Phoenix's systems. Pain seared through his mind as he channeled his temporal abilities through the ship's enhanced sensors. In a blinding flash of energy, Louis created a quantum entanglement between the two temporal engines. The second engine, still in the midst of the battle below, shimmered and vanished, rematerializing in the Phoenix's cargo hold. "Engine secured," Louis managed to say before his body began to phase in and out of normal spacetime, the strain of his efforts pushing him beyond his limits. Erebus's voice crackled through the comm system. "Initiating emergency extraction. All units, fall back to the landing site immediately." As the ground team retreated under heavy fire, the Arbiter's prototype fighter engaged enemy craft that emerged from hidden hangars on the planet's surface. The dogfight that ensued was a dizzying display of temporal warfare, with both sides phasing in and out of normal time. The Phoenix's engines roared to life as the last of the ground team made it aboard. As they prepared for an emergency hyperspace jump, Louis slipped into unconsciousness, his vital signs barely registering on Dr. Chambers' instruments. The task force shot into hyperspace, leaving behind the mysterious planet and its unknown defenders. They had secured the second temporal engine, but at what cost? As they raced back to their hidden base, the Coalition faced a race against time on multiple fronts, integrating the new engine, unraveling the mystery of the unknown human faction, and finding a way to save Louis's life. All while the Void Scourge invasion loomed closer than ever before. The Phoenix and its task force emerged from hyperspace, the familiar sight of the Coalition's hidden base bringing a collective sigh of relief from the crew. As they approached the docking bay, Louis felt a surge of pain course through his body, his vision blurring as the ship touched down. "Get him to the medical bay immediately!" Dr. Chambers shouted, her voice tinged with urgency as Louis was rushed from his medical pod. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. While Louis drifted in and out of consciousness, the Coalition base hummed with constant motion and purpose. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, integrating the newly acquired temporal engine into their existing systems. Louis awoke to find himself in a specialized stasis chamber, surrounded by a shimmering field of temporal energy. Dr. Chambers stood nearby, her face a mixture of concern and cautious optimism. "We've managed to slow down your cellular degradation," she explained, gesturing to the readouts on a nearby screen. "This chamber is utilizing controlled temporal fields to stabilize your condition. It's not a cure, but it's buying us time to find one." As Louis absorbed this information, he became aware of a subtle change in his perception. The temporal energies surrounding him felt more vivid, more alive than ever before. He could sense the ebb and flow of time itself, pulsing through the base like a living entity. Outside the medical bay, the Coalition's efforts to prepare for the impending Void Scourge invasion intensified. The Arbiter led a team in analyzing the captured scout ship, their findings proving invaluable in understanding the aliens' technology. Commander Erebus, meanwhile, focused on interrogating the captured human assailant from their recent mission. Louis listened intently as Erebus shared the results of these sessions during a briefing in the medical bay. "His name is Marcus Thorne," Erebus explained, his holographic image flickering slightly. "He's part of a group called the Temporal Guardians, descendants of a splinter cell from the ancient human empire. They've been working in secret to protect temporal technology from misuse." As this new information sank in, alarms blared throughout the base. Long-range sensors had detected a massive energy surge from the location of the Void Scourge portal device. The invasion was imminent. The Coalition leadership convened an emergency war council, their holographic images appearing around Louis' stasis chamber. As they discussed strategy, Louis found his mind racing, processing the temporal data flowing through the base's systems at an unprecedented rate. "We need to strike first," Louis interjected, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "Use both temporal engines to create a time dilation field around their portal. Slow down the activation process." The council members exchanged glances, considering the audacity of the plan. After a moment of tense silence, Commander Erebus nodded. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance. We'll need every advantage we can get." As preparations for the preemptive strike began, Louis felt his strength returning. The stasis chamber's temporal fields, combined with his unique connection to the technology, were reversing the cellular damage he had suffered. Despite Dr. Chambers' protests, Louis insisted on joining the mission. "My abilities are crucial to its success," he argued, already disconnecting himself from the stasis chamber. I can modulate the temporal energies more effectively than any computer system. The Phoenix underwent rapid upgrades, its systems reconfigured to channel the immense power required for the time dilation field. Lewis worked alongside the engineering teams, his enhanced perception allowing him to fine-tune the temporal calibrations with unprecedented precision. As the Coalition fleet prepared for departure, Lewis stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching as ships from all member factions assembled in formation. The first wave of temporally enhanced vessels took their positions, their hulls gleaming with new technology. The Arbiter's voice came through the communication system. All squadrons, report in. Temporal fighters, form up on my wing. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Louis closed his eyes, extending his senses through the ship's temporal systems. He could feel the fabric of space-time bending around them, carrying them towards their destination. They emerged from hyperspace to find a massive Void Scourge defensive force guarding the portal device. Without hesitation, the Arbiter led his squadron of temporal fighters in a daring assault on the outer defenses. Lewis watched in awe as the advanced fighters phased in and out of normal time, outmaneuvering the alien ships with impossible precision. The main fleet used this distraction to move into position, with the Phoenix at its heart. As they approached the optimal position to initiate the time dilation field, Lewis connected himself to the ship's temporal systems. He could feel the combined power of both engines coursing through him, raw temporal energy waiting to be shaped and directed. "Initiating time dilation field now," Lewis announced, his voice steady despite the strain. A massive surge of temporal energy erupted from the Phoenix, enveloping the Void Scourge portal device. The fabric of space-time visibly warped, creating a shimmering bubble around the target area. Inside the field, the portal's activation process slowed to a crawl. The Void Scourge forces, caught off guard by this unprecedented tactic, intensified their attack. The space around the Phoenix erupted in a furious exchange of weapons fire as both sides committed fully to the engagement. Louis gritted his teeth, focusing all his concentration on maintaining the time dilation field. Through his connection to the ship's systems, he could sense the Void Scourge attempts to disrupt the field, countering each one with subtle adjustments to the temporal harmonics. As the battle raged around them, Lewis knew that the outcome of this conflict would likely determine the fate of the galactic realm. The Coalition fleet fought with renewed vigor, their temporally enhanced ships holding the line against the Void Scourge onslaught. The Phoenix shuddered under enemy fire, its shields straining against the assault. Louis could feel the temporal energies fluctuating, threatening to destabilize the time dilation field. He pushed himself to the limit, drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. In the midst of the chaos, Lewis caught a glimpse of the Arbiter's fighter executing an impossible maneuver, phasing through an enemy ship before rematerializing to unleash a barrage of temporal weapons fire. The Void Scourge vessel exploded in a burst of fractured time, its debris scattering across multiple temporal planes. As the battle reached its fever pitch, Louis realized that their bold gambit had created an opportunity. The time dilation field wasn't just slowing down the portal's activation, it was creating a vulnerability in the Void Scourge defenses. If they could exploit it, they might be able to do more than just buy time. With this realization, Lewis began to recalibrate the temporal field, preparing to take their strategy to the next level. The fate of the stars hung in the balance, and the true test of the Coalition's strength was about to begin. The fate of the stars hung in the balance, and the true test of the Coalition's strength was about to unfold. Louis's fingers danced across the temporal control interface, his mind racing as he recalibrated the time dilation field. The very fabric of space-time warped around the Void Scourge portal, creating a shimmering bubble that slowed the device's activation to a crawl. But the strain of maintaining such a massive temporal distortion took its toll. Alarms blared throughout the Phoenix as power fluctuations threatened to destabilize the temporal engines. Louis gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to keep the field stable. Through his neural link, he could feel the ship's systems groaning under the immense load. "Lewis, your neural activity is spiking dangerously," Dr. Chambers called out, her voice tight with concern. "I'm initiating emergency stabilization protocols." A cool sensation washed over Louis as the medical systems kicked in, but the connection between his mind and the ship's temporal matrix remained tenuous. He knew that the success of their daring plan hinged on his ability to maintain the field long enough for their forces to disable the portal device. Outside the Phoenix, the battle raged with unparalleled intensity. The Arbiter's squadron of temporal fighters danced through space, phasing in and out of normal time as they engaged the Void Scourge vessels in close-quarters combat. Their advanced shielding allowed them to pull off maneuvers that defied conventional physics, outmaneuvering their alien counterparts with impossible precision. But the Void Scourge were quick to adapt. Their ships began to fire in erratic patterns, anticipating where the temporal fighters would reappear. The space around the Phoenix erupted in a dizzying display of weapons fire and fractured time. On the bridge, Commander Erebus's eyes darted across tactical displays, searching for an opening. Suddenly, he spotted a weakness in the Void Scourge formation. "All ships, concentrate fire on Sector Gamma 9, Erebus ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. "We need to punch a hole for Major Starborn's strike team." The Coalition fleet responded with a coordinated barrage, their weapons tearing through the alien defenses. A narrow corridor opened up, and Major Starborn's specially modified ship shot forward, its engines blazing as it raced toward the portal device. Just as victory seemed within reach, a massive shadow fell across the battlefield. A Void Scourge dreadnought, previously hidden behind the portal, emerged from concealment. Its weapon systems came online, unleashing a barrage that cut through even the upgraded temporal shields of the Coalition ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Erebus shouted as the Phoenix shuddered under the assault. "Redirect 30% of our forces to engage that dreadnought." The Coalition fleet split its attention, caught between protecting the Phoenix, maintaining the assault on the portal, and countering this new threat. Louis felt the strain increase exponentially as he struggled to maintain the time dilation field amidst the chaos. Inside the Phoenix, non-essential crew scrambled to evacuate as temporal distortions rippled through the ship's corridors. Dr. Chambers and her team worked frantically, fighting to stabilize both Louis and the failing ship systems. "We're losing containment on the temporal engines," an engineer reported, his voice crackling with static over the comm system. "If we don't reduce the load soon, we'll have a cascade failure." Louis' vision blurred, his consciousness stretched to its limits as he channeled more power through his neural link. He could feel his grip on reality slipping, his body phasing in and out of normal space-time. Through the haze of battle, Louis saw Major Starborn's strike team reach the portal device. They began deploying the temporal disruptor, but Void Scourge defensive systems immediately locked onto their position. The Arbiter, recognizing the critical nature of their mission, broke away from the main engagement with his remaining fighters. "Form up on me," he commanded. "We need to buy them time to activate that disruptor." As the temporal fighters created a defensive perimeter around Major Starborn's ship, the disruptor powered up. Its energies interacted with Louis's time dilation field, creating a swirling maelstrom of temporal energy around the portal device. The fabric of space-time began to tear, creating a rift that consumed everything in its path. Void Scourge ships caught in the distortion disintegrated, their component atoms scattered across multiple timelines. "All ships, fall back immediately," Commander Erebus ordered, his voice filled with urgency. "The temporal anomaly is expanding beyond our control." But retreat proved impossible as the growing rift interfered with faster-than-light systems, trapping both Coalition and Void Scourge forces in the affected space. Louis, his body racked with pain, made a fateful decision. Summoning the last reserves of his strength, he reached out through the ship's systems, attempting to stabilize the rift by channeling its energies through his own form. As Coalition ships struggled to break free from the anomaly's pull, the Void Scourge dreadnought moved to block their escape. The Arbiter, seeing no other choice, rallied his remaining fighters for a desperate assault on the massive ship's power core. "This is our last shot," the Arbiter transmitted to his squadron. "Hit that core with everything you've got." Major Starborn's strike team, their mission complete but unable to escape, made a difficult choice. They diverted all remaining power to create a localized temporal bubble, preserving themselves but leaving them trapped in slow time near the destabilizing portal. On the Phoenix, Louis's physical form began to fade, merging with the temporal energies he sought to control. Dr. Chambers watched in horror as his life signs fluctuated wildly, realizing the extent of his sacrifice. "Lewis, you have to stop," she pleaded. "Your body can't take much more of this." But Lewis pressed on, his consciousness spread thin across the ship's temporal field. He could feel the rift slowly beginning to stabilize, but the cost was beyond measure. The Arbiter's assault on the Dreadnought succeeded in disabling its main power core, but the massive ship's momentum carried it on a collision course with the Phoenix. Commander Erebus, his face grim, gave the order to divert all remaining power to the temporal shields. As the Dreadnought loomed ever closer, Louis made one final, desperate effort. His body now little more than a shimmer of temporal energy, he reached out to embrace the full power of the stabilizing rift. The Phoenix glowed with an otherworldly light, its form rippling as it stood at the precipice of destruction. In that moment, suspended between annihilation and salvation, the fate of the Coalition and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance. Balance vanished. In a blinding flash of temporal energy, the Phoenix disappeared milliseconds before impact. The Void-Scourge Dreadnought hurtled through empty space, its massive hull passing through the area where the Coalition flagship had been mere moments ago. Silence fell over the battlefield as both sides struggled to comprehend what had just transpired. The Coalition fleet, having regrouped at the designated rendezvous point, watched in stunned silence as a shimmering portal tore open before them. The Phoenix emerged from the rift, its hull pulsing with residual temporal energy. As the ship stabilized, the crew found themselves at the rendezvous point, having arrived mere moments after the rest of the fleet. On the bridge, Dr. Chambers rushed forward, her eyes scanning for any sign of Lewis. What she saw left her breathless. Louis's physical form was reconstituting before their eyes, his body phasing in and out of normal space-time. Sparks of temporal energy danced across his skin as he slowly solidified. "Louis, can you hear me?" Dr. Chambers called out, her voice a mix of concern and awe. Louis's eyes fluttered open, glowing with an otherworldly light. I touched it," he whispered, his voice resonating with newfound power. "The fabric of time itself. I saw everything." As the medical team worked to stabilize Lewis, Commander Erebus turned his attention to the long-range sensors. His eyes widened as he processed the incoming data. "Sir, we're detecting a massive temporal shockwave emanating from the site of the Void-Scourge portal," a sensor operator reported. It's creating some kind of barrier around their entry point." Erebus leaned in, studying the readouts. "It appears the combined effects of our time dilation field, the temporal disruptor, and the Dreadnought's destruction have created a self-sustaining temporal anomaly. We've effectively sealed off their invasion route." As the implications of this development sank in, another alert sounded. A small ship, cocooned in layers of temporal energy, materialized near the Coalition fleet. As the energy dissipated, Major Starborn's strike team emerged, looking bewildered but unharmed. "Report, Major," Erebus commanded as soon as communications were established. Starborn's voice crackled over the comm system. "Sir, it's difficult to explain. One moment we were trapped in our temporal bubble near the portal device, and the next we were pulled free by some kind of shockwave. For us, only minutes have passed." Before Erebus could respond, the Arbiter's squadron of temporal fighters warped into view. Their hulls bore the scars of intense combat, but they had survived. The Arbiter's face appeared on the main view screen, his alien features set in a grim expression of victory. "Commander, we've gathered critical data on Void-Scourge vulnerabilities during our engagement. This information could prove invaluable for our future defensive strategies." As the immediate crisis subsided, all eyes turned back to Louis. Dr. Chambers had managed to stabilize his condition, but it was clear that he had been fundamentally changed by his experience. Louis stood on shaky legs, his body still flickering in and out of phase with normal space-time. "We need to contain this," he said, gesturing to the temporal energy coursing through him. "I can feel the power, but I don't know how long I can control it." Dr. Chambers nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We'll need to develop a specialized containment suit, something that will allow you to harness these abilities safely. Over the next few days, as the Coalition established a permanent base of operations around the temporal anomaly, dubbed Chronos Station, scientists from all factions worked tirelessly to create a solution for Louis's unique condition. The result was a marvel of engineering, a sleek, form-fitting suit that pulsed with its own temporal energy. As Louis donned the suit for the first time, he felt his powers stabilize, the chaotic energies within him becoming focused and controlled. With his new abilities under control, Louis approached the Coalition leadership with a bold proposal. Standing before the assembled commanders, his voice resonated with newfound confidence. Using my enhanced abilities and the combined power of our two temporal engines, I believe we can send a message back in time, Louis explained. We can warn the ancient human empire about the Void Scourge threat, potentially altering the course of history and better preparing humanity for the challenges we face now. The room erupted in heated debate as the ethical implications of such an action were discussed. Eventually, after hours of deliberation, a consensus was reached. The potential benefits outweighed the risks. As preparations for the temporal transmission began, long-range scouts made a startling discovery. Hidden in the void between galaxies, they located a vast fleet of ships in suspended animation. Initial scans suggested these vessels were of ancient human origin. Louis, interfacing with the temporal engines, confirmed the scouts' findings. "It's a contingency force," he announced, his eyes glowing with the knowledge gleaned from his temporal senses. "A fail-safe plan created by the ancient humans. I can perceive the activation codes needed to awaken them." The Coalition leadership convened once again, this time aboard Chronos Station. Representatives from all factions gathered as Louis prepared to send the temporal message and activate the ancient fleet. Standing at the heart of the station's temporal nexus, Louis was flanked by the Arbiter, Commander Erebus, Major Starborn, and Dr. Chambers. Each of them represented the unity that had brought them to this moment. As Louis initiated the temporal transmission, the assembled leaders watched in awe as waves of energy rippled through the fabric of spacetime. Simultaneously, he sent out the activation codes to the hidden fleet. Across the vast expanse of space, thousands of ships began to stir. Ancient systems came online, awakening after eons of dormancy. The Coalition fleet, now joined by this awakened armada, assembled around Chronos Station in a display of unity and power unprecedented in galactic history. Louis stood at the forefront of this gathering, his containment suit glowing with hardly restrained temporal energy. As he looked out at the assembled ships, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. From a mocked and underestimated human to the linchpin of humanity's resistance against the Void Scourge, his path had been anything but ordinary. The combined fleet prepared to depart on a mission to secure key strategic locations across the galaxy. As the ships engaged their faster-than-light drives, disappearing into the cosmos in a spectacular display of light and energy, it was clear that a new chapter in galactic history had begun. Louis turned to his companions, his eyes gleaming with the knowledge of past, present, and possible futures. The temporal energy within him surged, a reminder of the power they now wielded and the responsibility that came with it. As the last ships vanished from view, Louis knew that their journey was a long way to go. The true test of their newfound strength was yet to come.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.